Chapter 635. December 30th was a Sunday, the first day of the New Year's Day holiday. The flow of people on the streets soared again. The residents of the surrounding satellite cities also entered the main city area to spend their holidays. The exhaust exhaled by 200 million people raised the temperature of Xia City by 2 degrees, making the body feel more comfortable. Around the Shangding building and the surrounding high-rise buildings, the traffic on the guiding light track shuttled back and forth without beginning or end. Most of them were private cars, but there were also 100-jointed cars that had just been dismantled and landed on various platforms by the traction force. Zhang Yingying got out of a 100-jointed car and walked quickly into the Shangding building. When she climbed the stairs, she stepped on the last bit of red of the setting sun, adding a glazed luster to her white pencil pants and nude high heels, which attracted a lot of attention. But she didn't care about that. She raised her hand to look at her watch and sped up again. In the sound of her heels hitting the ground, she passed through the corridors of the interior floors of the building. After a lot of twists and turns, she finally arrived at the place. Conference room 1135. Done. After making sure that she arrived before the appointed time, Zhang Yingying breathed a sigh of relief, adjusted her breathing, and pushed the door open. The circular conference room that could accommodate about 20 people was unexpectedly empty. There were only 3 or 4 people. Except for a staff member in charge of service, the rest were the same group. Not at the conference table, 2 bodyguards were sitting against the wall. At this time, they turned their heads and greeted her with a smile. "Yingying, you're here for a meeting?" "Big brother, Captain Gao." Zhang Yingying responded with the way she was used to, and then curled her lips. "His Majesty said he wouldn't come, but he only gave me half an hour to replace him. I climbed up from the bottom of the sea." While they were chatting, Zhang Yingying's eyes glanced at the young man at the conference table who was obviously a top perception master, but had no reaction to the changes in the outside world. Zhang Yingying gritted her teeth. "This guy." The 2 bodyguards laughed, but they had no intention of intervening. After the lecture on the 14th, in addition to the 2 concepts of cage and configuration that shook the world, the several bets that came before and after also painted the whole situation with a strange gossipy color. Many people in the inner world knew that the young genius, Teacher Luo, had a beautiful female guard beside him who was extremely eloquent. She had insulted the senior B-class expert, R, until she lost her composure and lost all face. As for Xia City, Zhang Yingying's favorable impression of Luo Nan was pretty much an open secret. It was just that Luo Nan, the main character and the core of this matter, didn't seem to have this awareness at all. This young man, who had just turned 16, seemed to always live in a dimension that was difficult for outsiders to understand. Sometimes he was depressed, and sometimes he was in high spirits. He did not seek external help and had his own logic. Luo Nan was earnestly looking at his flexible e-ink screen. He used his finger to open a folder. This was his mother's research data, which he had transferred from Professor Pan's cloud space. The theme of the information was modern architectural design, but for 99% of the world's designers, it was tantamount to a book that they could never understand. In the folder that he had just opened, there were about 7 or 8 different kinds of documents, from the most primitive observation data to intuitive 3-dimensional models, including the corresponding analysis and calculation. There were also some ideas that were written down on the spot, recordings of discussions, and even videos left behind. These documents together formed a basic unit. It didn't revolve around design theories or cases, but rather a genuine basic configuration. It was just a fragment that had lost the meaning of the configuration. There were about 3,000 to 4,000 similar units. Together, they formed the accumulation of basic research data on the configuration. This was a gift from the heavens that Luo Nan didn't even dare to dream of. "Ma must be watching me from the heavens." Luo Nan couldn't help but fantasize about these things. For the first time, he willingly crawled under the mighty power of fate, loudly praising it. He had once thought that since his mother was able to build a passageway that led to the clouds, she would certainly carry out explorations and research in that bizarre world. Thoughts were thoughts. But he never would have thought that the results of his mother's research were like a light boat crossing a specific path in the long river of time. They formed a predestined intersection with him, who had similarly chosen this path and was doing his best to row forward. The inheritance of fate was the highest reward for his 5 years of life and death struggle. Of course, Luo Nan wouldn't forget. He was very grateful to Professor Pan Wen, who had created, or at least accelerated, this intersection. There was also Tian Tian, Tian Tian, and Tian Tian, as well as all the people within this river of fate who had given him a boost. Hey, didn't you say that you were in a good mood? Why are you becoming more and more aloof? Zhang Yingying finally couldn't hold back. She slapped Luo Nan on the shoulder, announcing her existence. Luo Nan, who was wandering in the river of fate, was slapped onto the shore by Zhang Yingying's slap. He finally turned his head, but the side of his face met with an open lapel of a light-colored short-sleeved suit. He instinctively leaned back and saw a white-collared beauty with quite the intellectual and capable air. Zhang Yingying had one hand on the conference table. Her body leaned forward and she was very close. She cast a very direct gaze on Luo Nan's face. From Luo Nan's perspective, Zhang Yingying's clothes were more meaningful. This sort of outfit stirred up even more of his memories and emotions. Luo Nan still remembered that just 3 months ago, this was the same person who had disguised herself as a lawyer and boarded the ship that blocked the mountain. She continued to participate and push, making him willingly enter the water. She walked step by step into the deep water, all the way until he entered the river channel that belonged solely to him. She obtained the highest reward. So Luo Nan was very grateful to her. It could be said that he didn't forget his old kindness. Luo Nan couldn't help but laugh. I was just thinking about you. Zhang Yingying was a bit stupefied, but when she saw Luo Nan's expression, she knew that she was thinking too much. Even so, she was still in a bit of a difficult situation for a short period of time. She didn't want to retreat and show weakness. She just subconsciously reached out to touch the flexible screen and opened a document in the folder. It was originally a meaningless action, but the complicated mathematical equations stung her eyes with a couple of glances. Do you understand these? Yeah, not really. Luo Nan was very honest. The information passed down by his mother was very detailed, but the level was also very high. Luo Nan still didn't understand some of the special algorithms involved. He probably needed to search for information or even learn the relevant knowledge on the spot. He would need to grind it down bit by bit. In these 2 days, Luo Nan specially selected recordings and videos to experience them one by one. He only skimmed through the rest of the information. He didn't read it in depth. Even so, he felt dizzy every time he looked at a few sets. It was hard for his mind to continue. Luo Nan laughed when he thought of this. What are you so happy about if you don't understand? Why can't I be happy if I don't understand? Luo Nan knew this. If it was the past, he would have been grinded to the point of insanity long ago. Just thoroughly understanding his mother's research data required a large amount of time. Uncovering the deeper mysteries of the cloud world was even more distant. Then killing Gong Qi was placed behind these two in order. Wouldn't it be even more meaningless? Luo Nan should be anxious, but right now his mood was strangely tranquil and joyful. Every folder contained detailed and clear information. It recorded the process of his mother's research back in the day. Looking at the daily logs and records, as well as the recordings and videos that appeared from time to time, was like learning and conversing with his mother. So Luo Nan knew. His mother's writing was clear, definite, and concise. But when she scribbled and discussed, it was inevitable that she would hesitate and struggle. Sometimes she would even have a bit of a temper. When she encountered obstacles, she would promptly communicate with others in addition to researching on her own. Most of the time, it was in the form of brainstorming, letting many people participate. Among them were Professor Pan Wen, his grandfather, but most of them were that fellow. They discussed and even argued. They casually drew diagrams or more complex data formulas and so on. Luo Nan could understand some of them, but he couldn't understand some of them at all. But it didn't matter. He just quietly watched from the side. Every time this happened, his mood would be anxious and relaxed. He was like a glutton facing a delicacy. He wanted to swallow it clean in one gulp, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to eat it all. He could only taste it bit by bit. This feeling was strange, but it wasn't bad at all. Luo Nan chuckled. His laughter made Zhang Yingying's hair stand on end. And at this time, the door to the conference room was pushed open. A group of people came in one after another. Their gazes naturally focused on Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying. Some of them even revealed secretive smiles. Zhang Yingying didn't want to be gossip material. She also didn't feel the need to deliberately keep her distance. She immediately pulled out a chair and sat next to Luo Nan. The conference room was quickly filled with people. The last to enter was He Yueyin. She was still dressed conservatively as an office lady. As the outsider for today's conference, Tian Bang entered a second before He Yueyin. He wore a military uniform that was rarely seen. The Major General's gold star on his shoulder made him look extremely sharp. But when he opened his mouth, he still had that relaxed and leisurely appearance. Oh, the protagonist has already arrived. His gaze fell directly on Luo Nan without the slightest bit of concealment. He Yueyin didn't exchange pleasantries. She didn't speak nonsense. She just nodded slightly at Luo Nan after sitting down. She said, "Next we'll have a meeting. We'll discuss the specific matters related to the scavenger project." During yesterday's video conference, the branch team had already reached a consensus. They basically agreed to cooperate with Xia City's government, the garrison force, and the East Sea Military Theater. We'll push forward with the research and development of this project. We invited Major General Tian to this meeting today to ask him to introduce the background of the project in detail. We'll discuss the functional requirements of the project, the technical bottleneck, the research and development plan, and other issues. We'll strive to form a framework and implement it as soon as possible. Her gaze fell on Tian Bang after she finished speaking. Tian Bang understood. He grinned and took over the conversation. "Today I've come here to discuss the scavenger project. Of course it's the first priority. But before that, we can't avoid the convention. We still need to pay our respects." Chapter 636. Right now, the people seated in the conference room included a B-rank power like Gao Meng, the vice president, 2 veteran deputy secretaries, and several members of the technical team. Basically, half of the technical elites of the Xia City branch were here. They all heard Tian Bang's absolute explanation, but no one expressed any dissatisfaction. What was there to doubt? The government and the military had clearly come for Luo Nan's Bloodwill Ring Fortress. This was the cornerstone of the cooperation between the two sides. Without this, any other terms would be meaningless. Needless to say, the 1,000-person lecture on the 14th of this month had already established Luo Nan's authoritative position in the mental side. The Bloodwill Ring Fortress was anchored in the depths of the Abyss region. Over 90% of the people in the conference room would go there from time to time to experience and research. Right now, there were quite a few people staring at Luo Nan with burning gazes. They wanted to find an opportunity to toss out all the doubts they had accumulated over the past few days, seeking a thorough understanding. Luo Nan did not know about these things, nor did he care. According to common sense, after Tian Bang's flattery, Luo Nan should have said a few polite words to complete the formalities. This was the custom of mutual business flattery. But Luo Nan did not react until Tian Bang finished speaking. He just sat steadily in the middle of the conference room and raised his head, indicating that he was listening to him. That was all. Fortunately, no one raised too high a demand for Luo Nan's conduct, especially Tian Bang himself. He had already experienced Luo Nan's apathy and dullness 2 nights ago, so he just laughed it off. Then he signaled to the staff to turn on the projection equipment and show the finished presentation to the participants. Of course, General Tian was a bit arrogant. He would not waste his breath explaining. The following introductions fell on the shoulders of his accompanying aide. Next, let me introduce the background of the project. The one who stood up to act as the speaker was Lieutenant Colonel Zhu Ling. This young soldier was also an old acquaintance of Luo Nan's. They had even eaten a meal together a few days ago because of the Thunder Falcon Dojo. Zhu Ling was different from his own sloppy superior. He always had a serious and upright expression. His figure was ramrod straight like a soldier, and he naturally brought the atmosphere of the conference on the right track. Luo Nan was a bit distracted at this time. The situation before him made him think of the mutant infection incident that he and Peony had dealt with together. There was a time when he had attached his soul to ink and participated in this kind of briefing. It seemed to be much more interesting than this. Another important reason was that the background information provided by the military was nothing new. Although Luo Nan wasn't present at the voting site yesterday, he was able to get a basic understanding of the situation through Tianbang's prior communication. There weren't too many changes. Zhang Yingying, who was beside him, was a temporary helper who had been brought in when she was in seclusion. She didn't know much about the project, so she listened attentively at first. However, Zhang Yingying was in the most well-informed hidden indigo firm. Her accumulation of information was far from something a newbie like Luo Nan could compare with. She easily drew inferences about other cases from one case and understood the cause and effect. She lost interest and moved closer to Luo Nan to chat in a low voice. In the end, she was still able to keep up with today's main topic. The government and the military have finally found an opportunity. Luo Nan didn't refuse to whisper to his friend. He also wanted to hear Zhang Yingying's opinion. They have always disliked certain B-class experts and even transcendents from the inner world. I'm talking about the mental side. Especially people like Snake Tongue, who dabble in curses and witchcraft. Of course, there are also those illegal orders. They play with all kinds of blood sacrifices and black masses. Every year, several thousand lives are involved in the inner world murders. They want to control them, but they can't. They can't get any benefits either. Of course, they hate them to the bone. Zhang Yingying's explanation was very close to Tianbang's, excluding a few subjective descriptions. She chuckled as she spoke. On the side of the government and the military, Old Gao and the others. Oh, and you as well. They are all criminals engaged in illegal construction. It's just that right now they're thinking of enlistment. Illegal construction? I don't think it counts. The Abyss region is more appropriate to call it a land outside of the law or a wilderness of the vast sea. Yes, Mr. Pioneer Luo Nan. In the ability system of the society, the code name of a B-class expert was architect. Some people say it was engineer, but the former was more appropriate. Of course, the fleshly body could be used as well. It wouldn't be wrong to say that the structure of the body and soul was constructed. However, the earliest source of this name was the so-called Abyss Region Architect. It referred to the mental side building their own house in the Abyss region. Everyone had an intuitive understanding of the vile environment of the Abyss region after the appearance of the fortress. It was absolutely not an easy task to complete the construction of structures there. Even a veteran B-class expert like Gao Meng could only plant simple structures such as the spirit glyph for a short period of time. They couldn't withstand the wind and rain for long periods of time. Even more amazing characters were able to retain some seeds and frames, and then construct more complex structures on top of them. Only transcendents were able to construct semi-permanent structures, forming all sorts of inconceivable effects. Reaching this step, one could already be called a god, according to the words of the various orders. Reaching this step, the so-called religious altar residents could already borrow the berserk and inexhaustible power of the Abyss region. Its level and intensity far exceeded the limits of humans, forming a virtuous cycle. But how many transcendents were there in the world? Constructing structures in the Abyss region was so difficult. It was inevitable that some people would come up with crooked ideas. They would forcefully seize a person's essence energy, stimulate a mortal's heart, extract soul strength through black witchcraft, evil sacrifices, and so on. These were the most common methods. There were also darksider life forms like the human-faced arachnid. There were also some mutants that possessed special abilities. They were born to stir up trouble in the Abyss region. Due to the special nature of this level, the effects were enormous. Some of them were even vile. This caused the already dangerous and complex Abyss region to become even more foul. Looking at it from this angle, the work of scavengers was indeed necessary. The guide Juling just so happened to transform the relevant statistical data into an intuitive pie chart. He talked about how many types of illegal constructions were in the Abyss region. He talked about how much direct damage was caused. He talked about how much trouble would radiate to the traditional 3 belts on the mental plane, and so on. Of course, he also talked about the benefits that would be brought to everyone's cultivation and lives after the governance was perfected. In short, he acted as if he had ample reasons and was worthy of trust. Gao Meng, who sat across from Luo Nan, let out a yawn. He was also one of the people who voted last night. He really wasn't interested in these official articles. He squinted his eyes to see Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying chatting happily. Then he thought about how he didn't stop Luo Nan last night. He felt a bit unbalanced in his mind. He knocked on the table. Chapter 637. Gao Meng's words were crude, but his reasoning was not crude. The background and significance of the project could be explained to the heavens, but in the end, it all came down to practicality. The scavenger project had to be guided by technology. No matter how perfect the other ideas were, they were meaningless if they were impractical in terms of technology. Juling didn't mind his own explanation being interrupted. Instead, he took advantage of the situation to cut into the specific technical link. According to the collected data and user feedback, the functionality of the fortress is quite simple and crude. It's like a fixed fort. It only has 2 basic attributes, defense and attack. If it wants to truly display its usefulness, this fort must possess mobility, probing, and other functions. Therefore, we hope that the project team can combine the Blood Will Bracelet product and develop a few basic elements of a paper talisman plugin in a short amount of time. Then we can coordinate and perfect it. Luo Nan raised his head. So it's just a temporary product, right? This is a long-term project. The government and the military's idea is to use the fortress as a large functional platform. We believe that it possesses this kind of potential. But there's a problem with your train of thought. Luo Nan raised his head. His gaze swept across Gao Meng, Juling, and even Tian Bang and He Yuan's faces. He shook his head and said, "The direct cause of the crude functionality of the fortress is the crude functionality of the Blood Will Bracelet. The design of the paper talisman plugin is cumbersome. After all, they are only transitional products. They are temporary crutches that can't be borrowed. If we were to talk about the root cause, it would still be the lack of the participants' configuration thinking and skills. In other words, it's a fundamental problem." Luo Nan mercilessly criticized the product his own company had launched. He conveniently swept everyone in. He spoke bluntly under the subtle expressions of the group of people. If a hardware plugin is needed to realize a function, then this system platform is trash. The fortress can have hardware, but it can't be this kind of hardware. The fortress itself isn't that bad. It's just the current application model that's bad. Zhang Yingying giggled to the side. Luo Nan was baffled. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Honest boy, fight." Zhang Yingying clenched her fists and waved her arms, encouraging him. Quite a few people blinked from the sourness that assaulted their faces. Although he was the instigator of the situation, Gao Meng revealed the true face of the most enthusiastic fortress fan. He immediately got into the zone and asked anxiously, "What's the best way to use it?" Luo Nan thought for a bit and said, "In an ideal state? What I mean is, under the impetus of complete configuration thinking and skill, the fortress should be like a giant ship roaming the universe. There should be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of crew members inside. Together, they formed a group consciousness, but there was a clear division of labor. Everyone cooperated and performed their own duties. Their posts, functions, configurations, and operations were all unified. The crew of a bastion ship are the architects and operators of the ship. They use their thinking and technology to create the necessary configurations. These configurations must conform to the logic of the bastion platform, as well as the characteristics of the ship's own soul. Not only could it realize the effective integration of collective strength, but it could also increase the adaptability of the platform as much as possible and raise the upper limit of the platform. If necessary, The fortress platform on the mental plane needs to be unified with the equipment platform on the material plane. It's like the Deep Blue Walker's formatting domain. That should be a variant of the abyssal region configuration. It can be effectively combined with the mechanical combat platform and the operator, truly forming a mutual interference between the mental and the material. It is a combat platform that straddles the two domains. Luo Nanyang spoke eloquently. In the beginning, there were people in the meeting room who were whispering to each other and exchanging glances. But later on, everyone shut their mouths and stared at him. Aside from Luo Nan's speech, there was not the slightest noise in the meeting room. Only when Luo Nan's voice fell did Gao Meng loudly applaud. This train of thought is beautiful. It sounds like everything is right in front of your eyes. You've been thinking like this for a long time. It really was right in front of their eyes. This was because what Luo Nan had described truly existed in the alien civilization related to the external neuron. In the initial interface of the virtual brain system, there were two satellites orbiting around the virtual brain. One of them was an exoskeleton armor, which represented the development system of an individual. The other was a spacecraft in outer space, which represented the application of collective power. Luo Nan had more or less straightened out the logic within through this period of analysis and study. His train of thought naturally became clearer and more intuitive. It's truly marvelous. It even makes people believe that Mr. Luo has seen a scene that truly exists. This is the foresight of wisdom. Tian Bang lightly clapped his hands from the far end of the long table. His words sounded similar to Gao Meng's at first glance, but there was a bit of a different flavor in the transition of the syllables. He Yueyin gave him an ice-cold glance because of this. Tian Bang was thick-skinned. He didn't even blink. But then he changed the topic to another aspect. We are more at ease now that we understand Mr. Luo's train of thought. Letting Mr. Luo become the Chief Technical Officer of the Scavenger Project is truly the most appropriate choice. Zhang Yingying asked curiously, Chief Technical Officer? According to the usual practice of civil-military cooperation projects, the military is willing to provide a certain amount of remuneration and technical shares to employ Mr. Luo as the Chief Technical Officer of the project. If Mr. Luo is willing, we can also provide an official title and engage in a longer and more intimate cooperation. Oh! Luo Nan responded casually. Tian Bang had said similar words yesterday during the remote vote. Now he repeated it again. It was like taking off one's pants to fart. It was an unnecessary move. Though the Blood Intent Ring Fortress was not Luo Nan's original invention, he was probably the only person on Earth right now who truly understood the marvels within, excluding a certain person whose whereabouts were unknown. There was no need to talk about this in Xia City. Unless President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu relied on their seniority to interfere, no one could occupy this position. Since he had agreed, he had to do things. Luo Nan had a basic train of thought. He was operating on the flexible e-ink screen when he felt the gazes of all the participants. The natural noise had all disappeared. Zhang Yingying's elbow, resting on the table, came over. You want to enter the system? Only now did Luo Nan discover that everyone's focus was different. He was only thinking about the first half, but everyone else was thinking about the second half. The second half. Oh, that's what I mean. Luo Nan's uncle, Mo Haiheng, was a high-level employee of the SEA. Luo Nan had some concept of the situation of the public sector. Tian Bang was talking about titles and not positions. This meant that if Luo Nan nodded, he could enter the military and government public sector and become a public employee. He could enjoy the most stable social benefits, but of course, he would be restrained by the entire public sector. He was not interested in this at all. Let's talk about titles and whatnot later. It's too troublesome. I don't want people to manage me. The breathing noises in the conference room returned to normal after hearing Luo Nan say this. The group of people all laughed. It had to be said that Luo Nan's current way of thinking was quite in line with his age. They were all laughing, but there were subtle differences between members of the military, members of the society, and even different people. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to these things. It was just as he said before. The fortress was still far from complete. he needed to expend a considerable amount of energy to supplement and amend it. Defense, attack, movement, and detection. There were 4 basic elements in total. Not only did he need to perfect them one by one, he needed to form a complete system. Even if he could find mature and complete examples in the user manual and the virtual brain system, the original design would not be suitable due to the difference in the user's basic abilities. It wasn't something that could be done in a day or two, or even a month or two. Luo Nen operated on the flexible e-ink screen. The first thing he opened was the calendar and the corresponding work schedule. Zhang Yingying moved closer to take a look. She saw that the schedule was at least half a year later. She couldn't help clicking her tongue twice. Luo Nen ignored her this time. He considered how he should insert the research and improvement work of the Blood Intent Ring Fortress into the process of learning the external neuron configuration theory, researching his mother's thesis, and collecting and analyzing the cloud configuration fragments. Well, from this angle, the transformation of the fortress, the construction of the Blood Soul Temple thousands of kilometers away, and even the specific actions of killing Gong Qi in the cloud world were all considered exercises in the process of learning and research. And when he considered the difficulty, the transformation of the fortress seemed to be relatively simple. It was just right for a beginner like him. Luo Nan's last bit of apprehension was dispelled after he incorporated the mission into his own logical system. He immediately began to modify the schedule. He pondered about it for a while and said, "I need to equip a team." Tian Bang, He Yueyin, and the others were discussing the specific issues of cooperation right now. However, the information that Luo Nan inserted was still the first priority. Tian Bang responded in the first instance, "Of course." Luo Nan wasn't going to be polite with him. Professionals can supplement depending on the needs. This includes but is not limited to mental side charms, perception, realization, mathematical modeling, mechanical design and manufacturing, material science. Oh, this includes laboratory production lines. Tian Bang chuckled, "You're the CTO. Research and development revolves around you. As long as the circuits don't go out of line, the demand doesn't exceed, and the output is uninterrupted, you can have whatever you want." Zhang Yingying curled her lips. Nonsense. Luo Nan was quite content with this before he was certain of a problem. He didn't say anything else. And at this time, someone from the society raised a question. It was directed at Tian Bang. "I have a question. If the reconstruction of the fortress is completed, its performance will be as expected. Then is there a clear direction for the goal? Is it to be pulled into the wilderness to fight against the mutants and Darksider races? Or is there some other plan? I feel that the government and the military don't have a clear arrangement in this regard." The person who spoke could be considered an acquaintance of Luo Nan's. It was another B-rank mental side psychic, Mr. Bai. His daughter was the mysterious and treacherous Bai Xinyan, who was hard to distinguish between friend and foe. Tian Bang maintained his smile in response to Mr. Bai's inquiry. "Even though I have confidence in Mr. Luo's talent and strength, it isn't a safe choice to go face-to-face with a monster like the human-faced arachnid when you've just set foot in this brand new domain. I am willing to suggest that we first apply this epic-making platform to Xia City's own defense and public security. First, we'll eliminate a few small problems and troubles. We'll continue to accumulate experience and plan for the future." Mr. Bai continued to question, "What are small problems and troubles? As long as the abyssal region is involved, it seems that there is no room for small fish and shrimps to interfere. I don't know if we can catch small fish and shrimps in the abyssal region. However, there are some people whose ambitions and desires have climbed too high before their abilities are sufficient. There are many such people. Xia City is no exception." Tian Bang gave Zhu Ling a meaningful glance. Zhu Ling understood and switched to the screen of the presentation. Soon, a circular interface that was pieced together from hundreds and thousands of garbled symbols appeared. "This is an invitation to some absurd event. Tomorrow night is New Year's Eve. It should be about time. Is there anyone here who has received the latest information?" A buzzing vibration sounded just as Luo Nan's voice fell. Though it was small and weak, it could not hide from the eyes and ears of the group of ability users in the conference room. Luo Nan was carrying out the initial details of the plan when he felt his wrist vibrate. His gaze shifted and he saw the virtual screen of his wristband appear. The garbled dial on it was extremely eye-catching. It was no different from what was displayed on the screen of the presentation. Chapter 638. Crown, crown, abandon the perfect position. Like this, quickly turn back time. Deliberately bumping into each other will attract others to look around. The wine will help me lie. Crown, crown, ugliness will eventually disappear. So, you decide the direction, deliberately colliding, pretending to be destined to be destroyed, and the mournful cries of samsara will no longer echo. Oh, no more echoes? Amidst the toxic melody, the lights, the sound, the screams, and of course, the most important thing was still the handsome and charming singing and dancing. This caused the small square stage that was temporarily set up to enter a serial explosion mode. Crown, crown, oh, shui yuan, shui yuan, shui yuan. This way, doll, doll. You decide the direction, Barbie dominates me, ah. Oh my god, is this still that 18th tier girl group? Luo Nan stood behind a layer of barriers on the stage. He was no longer in the best position, but he was able to fully experience the explosive atmosphere of the scene. Who would have thought that the BHD girl group, which had always been pure and cute, would have such a strong reaction after playing a little sex appeal? Crown, crown, Shuiyuan, Shuiyuan. My queen of the snow garden. Bamboo pole, this newly promoted B-class ability user of unknown age, waved his arms with all his might. Like the young men and women below, he gasped in admiration, and even screamed, completely ignoring the sidelong glances of his peers and non-peers. Papercut covered his face. He couldn't bear to watch. But when they looked further, Octopus, who was a medical worker, was also twisting his hips to show off his extraordinary sense of rhythm. It was as if he was on drugs. Since he was already in such a state, the joint investigation tonight had to be temporarily suspended. Sure enough, it's just as Brother Hai Jing said. It's more suitable for small venues. Luo Nan simply propped his elbow against the railing. He enjoyed this visual feast with a clear conscience. He never imagined that a naive person like Bai Yu would wear a suit, wear sharp eyeliner and maintain a cold expression while dancing. He almost didn't dare to admit it. There was an indescribable sexiness to it. Oh, speaking of which, I seem to have exposed something? Luo Nan subconsciously turned his face away. His line of sight cut through the entire region below. The BHD troop's small stage performance was part of Xia City's New Year's Eve celebration. Yep, a small part. To be precise, their performance was part of the small stage of the Flowing Water Group in Xia City's New Year's Eve event. While the song Crown was being played, at least a dozen similar performances were being performed in various areas of Cloud City Water Village. If there was a citizen in the Sky Square right above the large living area, he would be able to see the live broadcast of more than 10 small stage performances on the big screen in the square. But these were just for the sake of making up for the gaps in the square singing competition. However, all of these paled in comparison to the main venue in the municipal square. At least, that was the case in previous years. This year's New Year's Eve event at Cloud City Water Village was destined to be very different from the previous years. At the same time, he pulled out dozens of acting scenes and divided them into dozens of stages of various sizes. This proved that the director had either lost his mind or was going to go all out. Only with a huge investment of manpower, money, and energy can we achieve such a grand scene. Those guys are having a great time. Zhang Yingying adopted a pose that was more or less the same as Luo Nan's. She was supporting herself by his side. It was quite a coincidence that Zhang Yingying was dressed in a black suit with fine white stripes and shorts. She was dressed in the same style as the BHD troupe on the stage. She didn't have a lower body, revealing her snow-white long legs. If she were to jump onto the stage, the group of otaku men and women might mistake her for someone else, but they would most likely prostrate themselves before her slender and beautiful legs. Luo Nen just said, "Yep," when Zhang Yingying leaned close to his ear. "I heard that you have something going on with them?" It just so happened that the sound waves surged. Yep, that must be it. Luo Nan's face was blank. He expressed that he didn't hear what you said clearly. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. Luckily, Octopus, who was having a great time twisting his body around, shouted from across the crowd, "What's this girl troupe called again?" "BD." Luo Nan responded loudly. He was very happy to get a few more fans for his friend. But his voice was forcefully pushed down by Bamboo Pole, who was having the most fun. "Snow Garden is the tallest. Beauty leg." Octopus agreed loudly, "Beauty leg." Holy crap. Luo Nan wanted to correct him, but when he saw the crisscrossing long legs under the light, he was dazed. He missed the first moment. Bamboo Pole had already crossed his body and shouted at him, "Boss, if you have a signed photo, release it immediately. I want a hard photo." Snow Garden has a high-class face. It's a pity not to take a hard photo. Hard my ass. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He was just about to seriously correct the attitude of this group of rotten people when a greasy voice spoke out from behind him, "If you want a photo, just take it on the spot. Now is not the time. Go back and have some peace and quiet. Take a good pose. Take a photo however you want." Luo Nan furrowed his brows and turned his head around. There were about 6 or 7 people behind him. They had just stopped not long ago. The leader was a middle-aged man in his 50s or 60s. He was a bit plump, and his clothes could be considered decent. But from his eyes to his teeth, he revealed the various colors of society. Right now, his eyes were fixed on Zhang Yingying's back. She was leaning against the railing, making people very suspicious. He was about to reach out with his hand in the next moment. And then he would be dead for sure. Perhaps it was Luo Nan's gaze that alerted him. The middle-aged man finally turned his eyes and met Luo Nan's gaze. Clearly, he didn't expect Luo Nan to be this young. His gaze was also this cold. His expression was a bit stiff. But when he glanced at Luo Nan again, he saw the flickering Majibake dial on Luo Nan's wrist. He relaxed and laughed. "Little bro, are you coming along? What was that be again?" "It's a high-quality girl group. It's possible to get one, but it's a bit difficult to get all of them. Everyone can work together for a bit." Before he could finish speaking, his companion next to him went, "Oh no. Brother Zhou, this group isn't on the list." The middle-aged man, Brother Zhou, chuckled. "It's just a trick the organizers use to lure people. Since they're here, what's there to worry about? There's a manual marking function on the system. Just spend a few more points." As he spoke, he raised his wrist and aimed at the BHD group on the stage. Just as he was about to operate, Luo Nan happened to turn around and take a step to the side, blocking the miniature lens. Brother Zhou went, "Huh? Make way, little bro." Luo Nan completely ignored him. No matter what, Brother Zhou was still a person with a reputation. He couldn't eat a loss in front of his friend. His expression turned quite ugly. "Little bro, let me tell you this. In this situation, eating alone is the most childish behavior." Clap, clap, clap. Luo Nan still didn't turn his head. He just clapped his hands. "Okay, stop looking. Let's talk business." "What?" Chapter 639. As a big client who could attend the banquet, Brother Zhou and Boss Zhou naturally had bodyguards. However, the overwhelming disadvantage in numbers was enough to make any professional bodyguard lose the courage to confront them head-on. 5 meters away, the bodyguards hired with a lot of money were quite professional, and they were trying their best to squeeze in. However, any one of the audience in front of them was blocked by the big bodyguard, who had a strong physique, and it was difficult for him to move forward. For a few seconds, Boss Zhou thought he was going to be beaten up. He was not stupid, and he immediately activated the help function on the dial. This was the promise of the organizing committee for the safety of the guests. However, to his surprise, the audience did not pay much attention to him. 2 or 3 seconds later, under the call of the young man who still looked like a child, they continued to gather there. Naturally, Brother Zhou and the others were kept outside the circle. The young man's voice came from the center of the circle. A meaningful configuration must have a material foundation. Simple, switching circuits can be done with a little guidance. complicated ones need to be converted. The noise around the stage interfered with the voice transmission. The intermittent sentences also made Boss Zoe, his companions, and his bodyguards confused. They did not know what these people were doing. They were obviously VIPs of the banquet, but they wanted to have a class in such a fun place. Was there something wrong with their brains? But this was also good. They were all people with families and businesses, and they were all here to have fun. No one wanted to have a conflict because of something inexplicable. Boss Zoe gave his bodyguard a look, and the latter understood. Now that there was no obstacle, he came over to cover him and cut off the audience as much as possible. They retreated along the inside of the corridor, trying to leave this place of trouble. At this time, the service staff of the banquet contacted Brother Zoe through the communication device. Chairman Zoe, we have locked on to your position and ensured that you are under surveillance. Your personal butler will arrive in 1 minute to deal with the relevant matters. Yes. Boss Zoe heaved a sigh of relief, but he also felt a little regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would have brought his personal butler with him. He should not have despised the butler just because he was a middle-aged man about his age. If the butler had been with him just now, at least there would have been a buffer. Even though there would be people coming to deal with the dangerous situation, soon, Boss Zoe and his group were not willing to wait around. While those people were focused on the lesson, they continued to retreat. Right at this moment, when the two performances were intersecting, the surrounding noises dropped a lot. In the middle of the crowd, the youth's voice also became clear. Basically, conversion is still necessary. In terms of the composition of the spiritual plane, those that did not enter the abyss were mostly turbid streams. The soul energy of an ability user and a normal person is essentially the same under normal circumstances. Damn, he's a fraud. Mr. Zoe was a well-known figure in Xia City and a frequent customer of the Starry Sky Club. He was quite knowledgeable. He immediately classified Luo Nan in his mind. There was no way to reason with this nagging fellow. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. If he couldn't afford to provoke him, then why couldn't he hide? Just at this moment, the voice of the young faker rang in his ears again. He seemed to be giving an example. Just like us and the few over there, it's not so easy to distinguish between us at the low-end spiritual level. Meh. Boss Zoe suddenly felt his scalp tingle. He saw that group of dangerous people all turn their heads, their sharp eyes focused on his face. F***ck me. Boss Zoe was pinned down by over 20 gazes. Not a single one of these people seemed to be good people. Even though there were bodyguards in front of him, it was as if Boss Zoe had been impaled into a wall. His entire body froze in place, unable to move a single step. Only his bladder instinctively contracted and expanded. Where's the housekeeper? Why hasn't his personal housekeeper arrived yet? Excuse me. Hurried footsteps rang out from the other end of the corridor. For a second, Boss Zoe practically believed that his personal housekeeper had arrived. But then he realized that it was really hard for a middle-aged man of his age to have such a clear and sweet-sounding female voice. A group of people appeared in the corridor as the voice rang out. 3 of them had stage makeup on, and they all wore the same black long women's suits. They completely covered their shorts, exposing their snow-white long legs. Without a doubt, this was the BHD girl group that had just performed on the small stage with great success. The 3 beautiful girls were dripping with sweat due to the high intensity of the dance. Clara, who had a slightly weaker body, had her hair wet. But their already excellent skin quality seemed to reflect a layer of jade light. It was extremely dazzling. And this made things difficult for the stylist, who needed to quickly touch up their makeup. He walked backwards the entire way, completely unaware of the dense mass of people behind him. Bai Yu had called out to him early on. She called out to him to pay attention as she passed. Oh, Shui Yuan's life. This is undoubtedly a meeting of fate. Whether he was a true fan or just joining in on the fun, Bamboo Pole was quite engrossed in his role. He saw the BHD trio walk over quickly, and after sighing with emotion in an aria style, he wanted to rush over and ask for an autograph. But just as he took half a step, Luo Nan grabbed him by the arm. Didn't you hear that we need to make way? As a junior in the entertainment world, BHD had a very heavy task to perform tonight. They needed to endlessly switch between various small stages. They really didn't have a chance to catch their breath. This corridor was specially designated by the authorities to be a fast and convenient passageway for actors and actresses to quickly switch between stages. Of course, the appearance of Boss Zoe and the others, including Luo Nan, proved that the organizers had some hidden plans. Luo Nan didn't want to delay the work of the BHD trio, but he underestimated his position in the hearts of this small girl group. Shredded radish? Mr. Luo? Boss? The three beautiful girls all addressed him differently, but their attention was all focused on Luo Nan. Their nearly jogging footsteps all came to a stop. This kind of reaction made Boss Zoe, who was behind the crowd, suddenly realize something. So it was like, don't delay. Do your best. Following Luo Nan's words, the dense mass of people in front of them all moved back under Luo Nan's command. The corridor wasn't wide enough for BHD and their team to quickly pass through. Even though there were no compliments, this kind of action and this kind of effect was enough to satisfy the vanity of these girls. Under Shui Yuan's lead, the three girls all bowed in thanks. This way, the little meeting seemed to be coming to an end. But Baiyu was still a bit unwilling to give up. She had already run 2 steps when she turned around and asked, "What did you think just now?" Bamboo pole, octopus's whistle, and Zhang Yingying's snort mixed together. Luo Nan's mind was in a mess. He subconsciously spat out a word that left a deep impression on him: beauty leg. Baiyu staggered and turned halfway around. Her snow-white and smooth thighs tightened, nearly giving Luo Nan a knee strike. But in the end she put one hand on her forehead and bent one leg slightly. She borrowed her excitement to quickly strike a photogenic pose. "I think so too. You have a good eye." In the end, the young girl couldn't hold it in any longer. Her face turned red. Luckily, her stage makeup was quite thick and she used a smile to cover it up. She turned around and ran away, giggling and laughing. When she met up with her companions, one of them smacked the back of her head and the other smacked the buttocks. She was severely punished. All she could do was cry out. The members of BHD, who were currently enjoying the most glorious moment of their acting careers, obviously didn't know that there were a few pitiful bugs behind the courteous audience and fans on one side of the corridor. Their eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. They looked like a bunch of half-dead fish. "Don't give me an opportunity." Aya. Boss Zoe's internal spasms had already affected his stomach function. At this moment, in his blurry vision, a middle-aged man in a classic black suit with a bow tie quietly appeared. This man was none other than Boss Zoe's personal butler. The two had met before when Boss Zoe had entered the venue. It was just that Boss Zoe's brain had been fried back then. He believed himself to be an old player and wanted to do something a bit more exciting, so he refused this service. It wasn't too late. Boss Zoe struggled to speak, but before he could straighten his tongue, he saw his personal butler use impeccable etiquette to bow to the young psychic. It couldn't be considered flattery, but it was a clear and direct choice based on courtesy. It caused Boss Zoe's face to suffer an incorporeal blow. The pain was so great that it suppressed the diffuse internal spasms. The personal butler spoke respectfully. "Mr. Luo, we are very sorry that such an unpleasant matter has occurred." "Oh, it's nothing." Luo Nan swept a glance at Boss Zoe, who was stuck to the wall. He confirmed once more, "There's nothing unpleasant." Strangely enough, when Boss Zoe made eye contact with Luo Nan once more, the restlessness that filled his heart and lungs, as well as the rage that rushed to the top of his head, seemed to have been forcefully stuffed into a freezer. It rapidly cooled and froze. Then his reason returned. He used the most basic knowledge of social relations and basic thinking to quickly piece together a logical chain. The organizer of the grand banquet was the LCRF, the famous Life Cycle Research Fund. Specifically, it was organized by Cloud City Water Village and coordinated by the Starry Sky Club. This kind of power was completely unstoppable in Xia City, not to mention the entire Earth. However, the staff of the organizer would rather offend a major client like him in order to display sufficient politeness and humility in front of the young psychic. Wasn't the truth clear enough? Boss Zo shivered. A person's perception was always particularly sharp at times like this. So he could faintly sense that his rather clever gang of scoundrels had a similar reaction. Then the young psychic shot him a glance at this time. No emotion could be seen in his eyes, but the more it was like this, the more Boss Zo found it unbearable. He even felt as if his internal organs had been hollowed out. Only the cold energy known as fear grew from within the black hole, spreading layer by layer. His personal butler was a smooth and slick person, but he was truly unable to make an accurate judgment when faced with this seemingly innocent young man before him. He paused for 2 seconds and could only ask probingly, "Mr. Luo, if you don't mind, I'll take these people?" Chapter 640. Compared to mature language and vocabulary, the ability of human body movements to convey information was far too vague. In this current situation, Luo Nan's simple action of raising his hand could be interpreted in a positive way as, "I got it," or "do whatever you want." It could also be interpreted as, "you shut up," or "don't be noisy." No matter how smooth and slick the butler was, he didn't dare to make a rash judgment. As for Boss Zo and the others by the wall, the thumping of their hearts could practically drown out the dynamic music that had just sounded around the stage. "Let's continue." Luo Nan raised his hand. He just had the project team members, who had just given way, come over and discuss again. Boss Zo looked at the screen of people blocking the young psychic. It was as if he had just woken up from a nightmare. His legs went soft and he sat against the wall. A bodyguard grabbed him halfway. The butler squeezed out of the crowd at this time and came over to support him. Right now, Boss Zo had long since forgotten his previous anger. There was only one thought in his mind, and he spoke it out loud. "Let's hurry up and leave." No one had any objections, but their fate tonight was destined to be filled with twists and turns. Boss Zo's voice hadn't even fallen when Luo Nan's voice lingered in their ears like a lingering nether spirit. If there are no problems with the information, then there really are people who have established relevant illegal configurations through this event. Then the participants, the large number of tourists in Cloud City Water Village who don't know anything, are all targets that can be used. The people beside us are all participants. In an ideal situation, no matter how useful they are, they should occupy a certain position in the illegal configurations. I didn't. Boss Zo didn't understand at least half of Luo Nan's words, but he was able to understand the most critical part. Clearly, this matter wasn't over yet. Things were already like this, so he couldn't care about anything else. His words of defense blurted out. He was even faster than the gazes of everyone else. The butler's face was a bit stiff. He turned his head to speak, but all he saw was a group of people forming a human wall. Luo Nan didn't pay any attention to the noise outside the wall. He took the opportunity to ask a question. Were they inside? In other words, if you are the designers, how should you use them most appropriately? You can talk about your own views. None of the project team members spoke. They just looked at each other. In the end, Bamboo Pole grinned with a bitter smile. "Hold on. Your course is progressing too quickly. We're still learning the basics. It's not like you want us to do independent design." Luo Nan shook his head. Learning the basics requires a basic train of thought, and this train of thought is extremely simple. As I said earlier, any mental construct must have a material foundation. Maybe we don't know what those illegal configurations are, but we can definitely come into contact with some of them. Which one? Bamboo Pole asked on behalf of the other members of the project team. The structure of the human body and soul. Luo Nan casually waved his hand, taking the people in front of him into consideration. I remember saying that in a broad sense, the structure of a person's body and soul is also a type of configuration. Although the efficiency was a bit low, especially on the mental plane, its material foundation gave soul power a characteristic that was hard to change. The structure of inheritance and evolution over thousands of generations had a certain determinism. The material foundation of the human body determines that our bodies of flesh and blood are not as stable as steel or computer programs. There is bound to be a process of ups and downs. The majority of people under normal circumstances do not have a clear direction in their mental activities. The corresponding power flows, disperses, and transforms. Under these circumstances, soul power is like a container riddled with holes. In theory, it is necessary to seal off all other exits in order to allow it to effectively accumulate and operate. Only a single flow of power is given to this power. Cultivators guard their minds internally. Essence is the only one. This is probably the implementation of similar principles. Luo Nan's words were like words spoken on the side of the road to the elites of the project team present. However, some words needed to be said in the context and the identity of the speaker. The members of the project team all listened earnestly. No one, at least on the surface, showed any impatient emotions. There were even some people who tried to follow Luo Nan's train of thought. A young military researcher said, "Teacher Luo, what you mean is that the turbid flow on the mental plane is similar to ineffective waste heat. And in order to form an effective configuration, efficient rules and constraints must be formed. We need to find these rules." No, it should be to find the exit that forms the configuration rules. Zhang Yinging reminded Luo Nan of the identity of this military researcher. Shinhe. Apparently, he has worked in AB team before. Luo Nan nodded slightly. He was expressing affirmation towards Zhang Yingying's intelligence and Shinhe's train of thought. The exit needs to be singular, but the choice of exit is flexible. The human mind has many layers and changes. High-level ideals and beliefs are fine. Low-level emotions and desires are also fine. You still need to make a judgment based on the actual situation. Take today for example. If this New Year's Eve event is indeed a deliberately created environment, then what is the most appropriate choice? Someone else answered before Shinhe could speak. Of course, it's low-level emotions and desires. Luo Nan shook his head. Too crude. Human emotions are complex. The structure of the human body itself is a chaotic system. The brain regions and neurotransmitters involved in nearly every emotion are different. Conversely, the brain regions and neurotransmitter conduction bring about changes in emotions. The relationship between brain regions and neurotransmitter conduction isn't one-to-one. As a designer, as long as the conditions are met, you can randomly choose an exit. You can have over 10 different solutions. The starting point can be located anywhere in the 3 zones, not to mention the labyrinth of the abyssal region. Luo Nan's denial made the majority of people afraid to open their mouths. Instead, Shinhe muttered to himself, in order to crack this design, the fortress must focus on strengthening the detection and sensing module. It involves many layers and many angles. It seems that attack, defense, movement, and detection are the most important of the 4 basic modules. Does Teacher Luo mean to say that this is the focus of our next step of work? Researcher Sure is worthy of being from the AB team. Bamboo Pole clapped his hands on Luo Nan's head and laughed, searching and fighting as one should be the mental side's inclination and advantage. This direction is certainly not a problem. And speaking from a practical point of view, detection and identification is indeed the #1 priority when it comes to catching illegal configurations. Most people came to a sudden realization at this time. Today, Luo Nan didn't just come to scout and teach. He also came to determine the project team's progress plan. Perhaps he also had the idea of observing and promoting talents. Didn't that Shinhe just pop up? For a time, there were those who came to a sudden realization, those who wrung their hands, and those who were envious. Even though the military and political departments dispatched elites with excellent qualities, the subtleties of human nature were not factors that could be completely controlled in the end. Luo Nan remained silent after Bamboo Pole opened his mouth. He just quietly sized up the turbid flow that flowed around him, distinguishing the color changes within. Actually, he had never thought of things in such a complicated way, but letting others think in such a complicated way was a pretty good method. Letting Bamboo Pole worry about it was also pretty good. Brother Bamboo Pole, can I express a bit of a different opinion regarding the word illegal? Suddenly, a female voice cut in. The voice carried a smile that was yet not a smile at the end. It sounded intimate, but the content was thorny. A group of people walked over with quick steps from one end of the corridor as the voice spoke. Leading the group was a middle-aged woman with short hair and a neat temperament. Luo Nan had seen her before. She was the manager of the Starry Sky Club's restaurant department. She was also a good friend of Bamboo Pole, Sun Jiai. Luo Nan didn't have any ill feelings towards Sun Jiai. He saw this neat woman approach him with a few steps, and he indicated for the surrounding people to make way for her. Sun Jiai called out to Bamboo Pole from afar, but she was the first to bow to Luo Nan when she got closer. Her attitude was extremely low. "Teacher Luo, sorry to disturb your lesson." This low attitude just happened to complement the thorny attitude of Bamboo Pole. Overall, she was neither servile nor overbearing. Luo Nan gave a slight smile in response. He knew himself well enough to deal with such a shrewd, capable, and worldly person. He wouldn't forcefully stick his head out, so he let Bamboo Pole deal with her. Bamboo Pole didn't regard himself as an outsider. He laughed and spread his arms open to welcome her. "Oh my, this bro's business is expanding really fast. No wonder you look radiant and overflowing with spring." Sun Jiai giggled as she gave him a light hug. She spoke into his ear in a voice that the surrounding people could clearly recognize. "No matter how radiant you look, you can't stand the pressure of one hat after another. Can you give me a chance to defend myself?" "What are you saying?" Sun Jiai had already pushed Bamboo Pole away before he could finish speaking. She faced Luo Nan and spoke sternly. "Teacher Luo, if those people just now offended you in any way, I am willing to apologize to you on behalf of these ignorant people." Luo Nan grunted. "There's no need." Sun Jiai spoke again. "There are some matters that are quite out of line in this grand banquet. But I ask for Teacher Luo's forgiveness. This routine reception banquet is actually the LCRF's expression of gratitude to our colleagues and customers who support our biotechnology research every year. Since our customers involve all walks of life, in every field, have different requirements, and have different hobbies, as the organizer, and co-organizer, we can only seek the greatest common divisor within the limits of our capabilities." Luo Nan grunted but didn't have much of a reaction. Sun Jiai behaved like a diplomat. "I won't deny that many customers use their wealth, power, and other resources to obtain things that this society doesn't advocate, but it doesn't prohibit, in order to obtain a short period of stimulation. But we also do our utmost to restrain these actions within the bounds of legality and compliance." Bamboo Pole faced his old friend and seemed to agree. "That's right. This is a society of law, not a society of morality." Sun Jiai glared at him without the slightest bit of concealment. Luo Nan's voice rang in her ears at practically the same time. "Yes. From a technical point of view, there isn't much meaning in distinguishing between legal and illegal configurations on the mental plane before there are legal standards." Quite a few people raised their eyebrows when these words were spoken. Chapter 641. The current Luo Nan was undoubtedly the center of attention of everyone present. The object of his attention was also undoubtedly the object of everyone else's attention. Almost everyone subconsciously cast their attention toward Boss Zhou, examining him and pondering. Boss Zhou had the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle knocked out under the focus of everyone's gazes. He became a complete idiot who stood there, frozen on the spot. While the vast majority of people were watching Boss Zhou, there were also a few people discussing among the crowd. "That old lover of yours isn't simple. She dug a trap in a matter of minutes. It's good that our boss Luo is stupid and straightforward. He forcefully got over it. Screw you, old lover. She could even be my mom. Uncle Bamboo Pole, your taste is really heavy." "It's fine as long as her taste is good enough." Both sides were thick-skinned. Bamboo Pole couldn't do anything about Zhang Yinging. He could only laugh dryly and get to the point. Sometimes, it's better to be a bit more direct when dealing with things. "What are you guys talking about?" Octopus was a medical worker and a laborer in biological experiments. This wasn't his field of expertise, so he didn't understand for a moment. But this didn't affect his curiosity. Zhang Yingying pursed her lips. I'm talking about Brother Bamboo Pole's old lover. She started talking about legality and illegality. She has bad intentions. Octopus seemed to understand, but he didn't. He could only ask, is there anything else? What's a law? It's just a tool for a ruler to protect his interests. Then who's the ruler? This is still undecided for now. But from the knowledge of the vast majority of people, if they had to choose between the expounder and the executor of the law, who would they choose? Would it be us, the mysterious members of the inner world, or would it be the government and the military? Oh, of course it's... Oh my, this sister is from the Starry Sky Club. Octopus wasn't an idiot. He just couldn't wrap his head around it for a moment. He slapped his thigh when he heard this. That's it. Zhang Yingying shot a cold glance at Sun Jiai. If Luo Nan had followed this woman's logic, then he would have thrown the judgment standards and authority of the relevant configurations to the military, which we have no control over. Zhang Yingying wasn't sure if anyone was deliberately eavesdropping on them, so she simply posted it on the psychic wave network. Don't be fooled by the fact that everyone is working on the so-called Fortress project together. The atmosphere is lively, and the researchers are as respectful as primary school students. Even if this group of researchers were to kneel and lick Luo Nan's boots, could they represent the government and the military in kneeling and licking Luo Nan's boots? It's true that the branch cooperates with the military and political departments, but the Starry Sky Club is basically a bastard of the military and political departments. Bamboo Pole coughed. He's not a bastard. He's an LCRF. His bloodline is more mixed. LCRF, also known as the Life Cycle Research Fund, was an important investment fund in the field of biology jointly funded by several top tycoons on the surface. However, its backers were almost certainly some big shots in the political and military circles. Moreover, many forces in the inner world also had shares in it. Don't be fooled by how Tianbang treated the so-called Grand Banquet as a target, looking like he was about to flip the table. From the perspective of bloodline, this was more like a small experiment conducted within a controllable range. To put it a bit more formally, it was nothing more than a confrontational drill. Disregarding the element of internal strife, there might even be important members of the LCRF in the drill directing department. In the eyes of these people, the branch ability users led by Luo Nan were no different from the so-called creators of the illegal construction. If they were to really dispute over this matter, both sides would go to court. They would be casually manipulated by others. Who knew how long it would take to figure out who was right and who was wrong? Even if they were able to figure things out in a short amount of time, once this matter became a precedent, would they still have to follow the same rules if they were to encounter similar matters in the future? When that happened, the Xia City branch would be handing over the initiative and moral status. It was fine if the two sides were harmonious, but if there really was a conflict, it would be nauseating to death, not to mention anything else. Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole, these two scheming people, couldn't help but feel lingering fear. After Zhang Yingying calmed down, she became very curious. Do you think our boss Luo really doesn't understand, or is he pretending not to understand? Right now, no one could give Zhang Yingying an answer. The core party, Luo Nan, didn't need to give anyone an answer or an explanation. He just glanced at Boss So once more. He didn't want to linger in this cloister that had already been completely cut off. He walked forward without a word. 20 to 30 people naturally followed him forward. In the blink of an eye, the stream of people in the cloister had pretty much dispersed cleanly. Only Boss So's group of people were left standing there stupidly. They were like human stumps. An unknown amount of time passed before Boss So's brain finally recovered to a minimum level of operation. What the hell? What the hell? His mouth muttered curses, but in reality, these curses didn't leave behind any traces in his memory. Someone from his gang of scoundrels asked at this time, "What do we do?" Boss So's mind was restless. He slapped the wall. What do we do? Haven't we had enough yet? We didn't check the almanac before we left today. Let's go back. Let's go back, okay? Boss Zou's personal butler spoke at this time. Mr. Zou, tonight's events are absolutely not something we want to see. Boss Zou wanted to get angry, but he had just confronted a true big shot. He really couldn't bring himself to be angry. He could only chuckle twice. Fine. You don't need to say anything. I crawled out of the corpses of World War III when I was a kid. I know what to endure and what to admit. Just pretend that I never came here tonight. It had to be said that Boss Zou's behavior was quite straightforward. The problem was that the personal butler didn't loosen his grip. Mr. Zou, from the standpoint of the Foundation, please give us a chance to make up for it. Boss Zou was baffled. I don't need any compensation. I want to go home and sleep right now. Of course. This isn't a problem. We just need to adjust our timing and pace. The personal butler finally loosened his grip. But at this time, a dozen or so robust young men wearing black suits walked over from the other end of the cloister. They pressed forward. While Boss Zou and the others were muddle-headed, they had already assigned their tasks. 2 people were assigned to take care of 1 person. They didn't even miss out on bodyguards. This was a powerful invitation. Please do us the honor. The personal butler's expression was the most professional. At the very least, it was impeccable in form. Let's not talk about how Boss Zou and the others in the cloister were honored. Luo Nan and his group were already half a floor away. They were truly majestic. Those who didn't know better would think that some big shot had come over for an inspection. At least on the surface, Sun Jiayi really did treat Luo Nan like a big shot. She followed closely along the way. She explained to Luo Nan every time they passed a region. What was the position of this place in tonight's New Year's event? What functions needed to be realized? What emergency plans were in place? She practically treated herself as half a designer. Luo Nan was quite interested in this. This was because this was very much in line with the theory that all configurations must have a material foundation. With Sun Jiayi's explanations and his own overall observation with his mental senses, Luo Nan already had a more intuitive and clear understanding of the overall planning and layout of the grand banquet. This would be very beneficial to the progress of the project. Unfortunately, the time was almost up. Luo Nan raised his wrist to look at his watch. He added a few words in his mind before finally speaking. Thank you for your explanation, Director Sunday. I have benefited greatly from it. I need to go take care of a few private matters. Huh? Forgive me for asking, but does Teacher Luo need any help? Sun Jiayi didn't feel the least bit presumptuous in her words. I'm just going to see my sister. She has a performance on the main stage tonight. She has an appointment with her family. Recently, Luo Nan's status in the inner world had risen with the tide. In a certain sense, it had increased the safety of his family. The big powers were watching closely. Small thieves didn't dare to make a move. It was much better than when the 2000th miss incident was brewing. Under these circumstances, he was a lot calmer when it came to talking about his family situation. In fact, part of the reason he came tonight was to lead a team for research. But more than that, he came to protect his friends like BHD and his sister, who was also performing at the Cloud City Water Village branch venue. Sun Jiayi had the status of being the organizer and co-organizer. She certainly had a thorough grasp of this sort of information. She wasn't surprised at all when she heard Luo Nan's words. She said with a smile, "Since it's a family gathering, then we won't disturb you. If Teacher Luo has any needs, just let me know. Tonight at Cloud City Water Village, there's no one more convenient than us to do things." Luo Nan wasn't polite. He gave a slight nod, but then he thought of something else. He said, "Director Sun, that Boss Zou doesn't have anything valuable on him. Don't make things too difficult for him." Zhang Yingying pressed her fingers against her forehead. Her slender hands covered most of her face as she laughed sullenly. She had just said that he didn't understand. She was really sorry. Sun Jiayi was actually able to maintain her smile unchanging in this awkward situation. Don't worry, Teacher Luo. Some clients are quite curious. They want to take advantage of this special environment and time to carry out a few special experiments. But overall, there's still a sense of propriety. Luo Nan was amused when he heard her words. What do you mean by experiments? For example, experiments. A male voice suddenly appeared, replacing Sun Jiai's explanation. At the same time, a tall and thin man appeared in front of the crowd. He took 2 steps forward, but he was promptly blocked by Qin Ikuan and Gauda. Sun Jiai didn't have such a reaction when she appeared. This also proved that the 2 security elites were intensely vigilant towards the newcomer. The tall and thin man wore a well-ironed formal suit. His appearance was ordinary, but his aura increased. He stood there with a chuckle, looking very calm. He didn't care about Qin Ikuan and Gauda's obstruction at all. Or it could be said that he didn't care at all. Separated by the wall of people, the person spoke in a manner that was neither fast nor slow. Mr. Luo, your subversive expression on the mental plane has caused many people to become interested in the basic structure of this place. We should take advantage of this event to design a few experiments. It'll be convenient for us to compare notes with you, Mr. Luo, in the future. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since this field has been this lively. Zhang Yingying frowned. She moved closer to Luo Nan's ear and whispered, "This person is..." Chapter 642. Luo Nan spoke straightforwardly, causing Zhang Yingying and a few other friends who were most familiar with him to be stunned. They could not understand how Luo Nan knew this person for a time. It must be known that secret orders were not like the Ability User Society. All of their members could be found on the website. These orders always pursued mysticism, especially the middle and upper echelons. Most of them lived in seclusion and rarely came out. Rumors and all sorts of intelligence were mixed together. It was hard to remember without specialized research. Li Taixing seemed to be a bit surprised. He chuckled. "Teacher Luo, who has always immersed himself in research, actually knows my name? Then I am truly overwhelmed by the favor. My efforts on cages and configuration theory were not in vain." He changed the way he addressed Teacher Luo, but the smile on his face was a bit subtle. It would be more accurate to describe him as frivolous. Before Luo Nan could say anything, Zhang Yingying let out a low snort. According to the intelligence of the hidden indigo firm, Li Taixing was known for being amiable on the outside but arrogant on the inside. He was an extremely tough negotiator. The reason why he was not described as an expert was because he had truly negotiated very few difficult cases. This fellow was simply the loudspeaker and megaphone of the Order of Justice's power. She saw him use the word "I" 3 times in a row in 3 sentences. He had an attitude of "I am the center of everything." Even if his true personality was different from what was reported in the intelligence, the difference would not be too great. This fellow suddenly appeared in Xia City. It was hard for people to not think about complicated things. Zhang Yingying immediately sent this new intelligence to the firm and the relevant departments of the Xia City branch. She wanted to discuss things with Bamboo Pole and the others, but she heard Luo Nan speak courteously in a very practiced manner. "I heard the word configuration from others, and then I began to research and apply it. One of them was Mr. Child of your order. Your order's research in this area should be much deeper than mine. Mr. Li, there is no need to be polite." The smile on Li Taixing's face faded a bit when he heard Child's name. There had always been a serious conflict between the secular side and the truth side within the Order of Justice. Almost every believer was unable to avoid choosing a side. Unfortunately, Child was a capable general of the truth side when it came to these political coordinates, while Li Taixing was a staunch supporter of the secular side. The two had even clashed and dueled twice, let alone being friends. Therefore, Li Taixing deeply suspected that Luo Nan knew what was going on inside and that Luo Nan had deliberately used Fairchild to attack him. Li Taixing had really wronged Luo Nan, but in a certain sense, he had underestimated Luo Nan. Luo Nan was not aware of the twists and turns between Li Taixing and Fairchild. The reason he could recognize Li Taixing was because he had been in charge of the negotiations between headquarters and the Order of Justice. Luo Nan had been monitoring the situation on the Pacific Ocean nearly 24/7 due to the fact that it involved the grand plan of killing Gongqi. He had seen Li Taixing engage in a battle of words with important members of headquarters many times. Sometimes, Li Taixing had his arm around headquarters shoulder to shoulder. He had seen it many times, so of course he had to pay attention. Speaking of which, for the past 2 days, he had been wholeheartedly studying the information left behind by his mother and had not paid attention to the new movements over there. Therefore, Luo Nan and Li Taixing exchanged a few words of nonsense with each other. Their intentions were to gather intelligence. Luo Nan shot a glance over as his thoughts spun. He discovered another familiar face. Qingshao. This person had once teamed up with Wang. They could be considered to have crossed paths during the incident at Frost River Reality back then. After Wang's fate was unknown, Zheng Xiao became the temporary person in charge of the Order of Justice in Xia City. Zheng Xiao and Luo Nan's believer, Beis, were one civil and one military. They supported each other and barely managed to preserve a portion of the Order of Justice's properties in Xia City. However, they no longer had a sense of existence. Oh, Zheng Xiao had come, but Beis was nowhere to be seen. Also, Beis hadn't warned Li Taixing, a direct secret-bound first ablatum of the Order of Justice, that he had come to Xia City. Did he give himself away? Or was he completely marginalized? Luo Nan pondered Li Taixing, and Li Taixing pondered Luo Nan. Both sides were unable to grasp the main points. Unfortunately, Li Taixing still wanted to give a response. He could only deliberately bypass Fairchild and put on a fake smile. It is said that the accomplished are the teachers. While the vast majority of people are still tossing and turning about black mass and white witchcraft, Teacher Luo has used the format to formulate arguments, deciphered the meaning of the cage, and expounded on the marvels of configuration. He has seen through many mysteries with a single sentence. The title of teacher is not something that comes out of thin air. Luo Nan really liked this topic. He just so happened to see Zheng Xiao, so he returned the favor. Your honorable order uses the evolution field to propel the projection of the scales of truth. It is the most ingenious and grand soul strength transformation technique I have ever seen. It is said that a tall building rises from the ground. With this kind of transformation technique, the Order of Justice should be unrivaled in the world when it comes to research on the basic structure of the mental plane. You have this kind of foundation, yet you still want to strive for perfection. The research spirit of your honorable order is truly admirable. Li Taixing had managed to maintain a smile with great difficulty when Luo Nan's seemingly polite words entered his ears, but it nearly collapsed. The word "motherf *ker" swayed at the corner of his mouth twice before he swallowed it back down with great difficulty. Many people saw Li Taixing's unsightly expression. Those who understood the situation better, such as the intelligence expert Zhang Yingying and the secret order's research expert Bamboo Pole, could not help but snicker in their hearts. According to a few reliable and unreliable rumors, the Order of Justice rose to power because their first-generation first ablatum coincidentally discovered the ultimate killing weapon, the Scales of Truth. He borrowed the power of this top-notch sacrificial weapon to become one of the most powerful beings on this planet in a short amount of time. No one could deny the talent of the Order of Justice's first-generation first ablatum, but at the same time, there was a consensus in the industry. Many of the techniques and theories of the Order of Justice were established by reverse engineering the mighty power of the Scales of Truth. Even though it could not be confirmed that the foundational theories of the Order of Justice were flawed, this was indeed a reason for some powers to denounce and ridicule the Order of Justice. Of course, Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole did not believe that Luo Nan had done this deliberately. However, the more unintentional his words were, the more hurtful they were. Sure enough, Luo Nan did not specifically target anything. He even temporarily forgot about Gong Qi, Beis, and other practical problems because of the topic of this domain. Instead, he focused on a new topic, expanding his train of thought once more. He began to discuss with Li Taixing. First ablatum Li, are the experiments conducted by your honorable order the same as those conducted by others? Li Taixing reluctantly responded, there are some differences. Luo Nan shook his head. If you're talking about structural verification experiments on the mental plane, then I don't believe that the direction of your Order of Justice's experiments will be consistent with our project team and the vast majority of ability users of the mental side. Li Taixing was stunned. What do you mean? Luonan said, it doesn't matter what the nature of the various experiments First Ablatum Li has mentioned. It doesn't matter if it's black mass, white voodoo, or Eastern Taoist techniques. They can all be viewed as configurations or variations of configurations. Since this is the case, we must follow the fundamental principles of configuration. We must design according to the nature of the mental plane. Your honorable order is in the abyssal region. There was a limit to Li Taixing's patience. He interrupted Luo Nan's words. Teacher Luo, you misunderstand. The majority of our related experiments are conducted in the 3 zones region. Oh, you've already rejected this traditional concept. What should we call it now? Mental turbid? Of course we know that the abyssal region is a kind of nature. The construction and design of the abyssal region requires a qualitative change. Luo Nan shook his head and interrupted, it's not the same. The difference doesn't lie in the abyssal region or the abyssal region. It lies in the construction of the system itself. We all know that it's impossible to construct a configuration in the abyssal region when the soul strength of an ability user is still trapped in a cage. It's even more impossible for the general mental turbid to construct a configuration in the abyssal region. Hold on. Isn't there still the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress? There's also the Scales of Truth of Justice of your order. Forgive me for not being clear on the corresponding system of your order, but I assume that the Scales of Truth are used as a foundation for construction. I'll use this name for the time being. You don't mind, right? Li Taixing's lips twitched. It's simple and clear. Luo Nan laughed and continued. Whether it's the Scales of Truth or the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress, they can organize and transport the consciousness within the cage to the abyssal region. This is precisely where the value of configurations lies. But at the end of the day, it is the most common principle. A change in quantity can bring about a change in quality, and the combination of structures can make this change more efficient. In the end, it just depends on where the direction of the change is. Li Taixing subconsciously turned his head and exchanged glances with Zheng Xiao. But all he saw was confusion. What in the world are you trying to say? Luo Nan actually wanted to have a good discussion with Li Taixing, but when he opened his mouth again, he discovered that there really wasn't enough time. In the end, he decided to make a long story short. His tone was quite hurried. The inclination of the system determines the direction of the configuration itself. From what I can see, the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress should be classified as a tool type. It's like a spaceship assembled from parts. Through operation, everyone's strength is gathered together to charge into the abyssal region. It is a vehicle that carries soul strength. Its other functions can be created and assembled. It can also be dismantled and discarded, just like what our project is doing right now. As for the Scales of Truth, it should be a biological type. Oh, perhaps a plant type would be more accurate? This is my estimation. The entire system of the Scales of Truth may be an inseparable organic whole. It can have countless sides, but it must have a true and complete appearance. It is like a large tree growing in the abyssal region. Chapter 643. The atmosphere of Luo Nan and Li Taixing's exchange was heavy and oppressive. 700 meters away from this group of people, Fei Jin wore a conservatively styled evening gown that accentuated her figure. She paced back and forth in the room. The virtual interface inside was playing the scene of the scene 700 meters away. The content made Fei Jin. More accurately speaking, it made the controller behind Fei Jin rather irritated. Yinlu was still in a temporary stronghold several dozen kilometers away. She had been controlling Fei Jin to make the final preparations. She would appear before Luo Nan when the opportunity arose to carry out the relevant plan. But she never expected that she would encounter such a scene when she used her authority in the LCRF to remotely observe and collect Luo Nan's position and other relevant information through the monitoring system. This person? Is he crazy? Her voice dissipated within the room, but she didn't receive any response. Enlu turned to look at Mrs. Halder and saw her boss quietly sitting in a rocking chair. Her eyes were slightly closed. It seemed that she wasn't paying attention to the situation over at Cloud City Water Village. Or perhaps she didn't care about this matter at all. Didn't care? How was that possible? Enlu didn't believe that her boss didn't have any ripples in her heart. At the very least, she knew that the feelings in her heart were 10 times more complicated than what she had said. As a priest of the order who understood the fundamental marvels of the solidified configuration of the Abyss region, Enlu had always prided herself on being wise. She had made some preparations. Ever since the 14th, when Luo Nan brought hundreds of tourists to break into the Abyss region in one fell swoop and engraved his subordinates' traces semi-permanently, she knew that according to the direction of Luo Nan's research, it was only a matter of time before he touched upon the foundation of the various secret orders. But she never expected that the final execution would come so quickly. A minute ago, she was in control of the core secrets. She was destined to control this order organization with nearly half a century of history. But at this very moment, the treasure that she had always carefully protected had been revealed in front of everyone's eyes. Someone was flipping through it and playing with it without a care. The last bit of luck in her heart vanished like smoke in a puff of smoke. Plant type? Tool type? Such a fitting and deadly description would probably appear on the desks of the leaders of the inner world, and even the various powers of the secular society. Not only did Luo Nan's explanation penetrate the essence of the solidified configuration of the Abyss region, he even dissected the difference between the order configuration and the self-constructed configuration from a more objective angle. He tore down the final piece of the secret order system. After Sha-Man, the devil, the divine, the enchanting beauty, or the ugly monster, could only be judged by the more and more people who knew the truth. To the Blood Flame Order, to all secret orders, this was a sudden storm. I really want to kill him. Half a second later, Enlu realized that she had actually muttered it out loud. On the rocking chair, Lady Halder's eyes were still closed. Her body swayed gently, and a low voice flowed out from between her teeth. Both are expressing one's thoughts, yet there's actually no value in comparing them. I might as well do something more valuable. Enlu was speechless. At this moment, Luo Nan, who was far away in Cloud City Water Village, displayed an apologetic expression. This is an experience from several months ago. It gave me a bit of an impression. It was very blurry at the time, but it became clear in the past few days. I made some deductions, but I can't rule out the possibility that there's a problem with my memory. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Without waiting for Li Taixing to respond, Luo Nan tapped his wristband. It's about time. I need to hurry over. First ablatum Li, even though the nature of our experiments are different, we can still exchange basic principles. I hope that there will be a chance to talk again later. See you all later. Luo Nan was the first to leave after he finished speaking. A long line of people followed behind him. Sun Jia didn't move. She stared at the backs of Luo Nan and the others. A moment later, she let out a long sigh. Are there really people in this world who are born with knowledge? Li Taixing didn't speak again. He didn't show any expression or movement. He just silently watched Luo Nan leave. If he didn't do this, he might not be able to control himself and expose his killing intent in a straightforward manner. Li Taixing turned around and left after Luo Nan and the others entered the elevator. He didn't even say goodbye to Sun Jia and the others. Zheng Xiao silently followed behind him. There were also several people from the Xia City branch of the Order of Justice behind them. Ahead of them, Li Taixing walked faster and faster. It looked like he was returning to the lounge they were in before. Sure enough, Li Taixing returned to his starting point a few minutes later. Zheng Xiao followed Luo Nan inside. He sensed a strange aura within the room the moment he entered. He waved his hand at the attendants behind him, telling them to wait outside. After the arrangements were made, Zheng Xiao closed the door. He could clearly feel the slightly warped layout of the air in this room. This was an illusion technique that was secretly passed down within the Order of Justice. In this way, No matter what monitoring equipment was placed here, it would all become ineffective within the chaotic light and sound wave structure. Even a master of mental senses like Luo Nan would arouse the vigilance of the caster if he were to forcefully break through this barrier. Li Taixing clearly displayed a posture of wanting to discuss things in secret. Zheng Xiao actually let out a breath of relief. Being able to consider the issue of confidentiality proved that this secret-bound First Ablatum, who temporarily managed the affairs of the Xia City branch, still maintained a minimum level of clarity. A mere second later, Zheng Xiao wanted to revise his judgment. Li Taixing didn't sit down within the room. Instead, he stood in the middle of the hall, staring at Zheng Xiao, who had just closed the door and turned around. I need to get rid of Luo Nan immediately. Hiss. Zheng Xiao suddenly shivered and subconsciously drew in a breath of cold air. Almost instinctively, he set up another layer of illusion barrier. After doing this, he could no longer maintain his low-key and reserved appearance. He suppressed his voice and said, "Don't worry. First Ablatum Li, be careful with your words." Li Taixing laughed when he saw Zheng Xiao's appearance. What do you think the Xia City branch will think after what just happened? What will they think when they realize that we laid down 2 layers of illusion barriers for a secret discussion? It's better than you pointing at their noses and shouting about killing. Zheng Xiao wouldn't say this sort of silent criticism out loud. He could guess the reason behind Li Taixing's great killing intent, so he took a roundabout way to persuade Li Taixing. First Ablatum Li, although Luo Nan is gifted by a god, his temperament and experience are lacking. The logic of his words often transcends the horizon. He might not have done it on purpose. Li Taixing directly interrupted him. Gifted by a god? Do you also believe that there are people who are born with knowledge in this world? This. How about this? Let's do a multiple-choice question. A single-choice question. There are a total of 3 choices, A, B, and C. Li Taixing didn't give Zheng Xiao the chance to refuse. He directly gave the question. Luo Nan is a gifted by a god, born with knowledge. B. There are no people who are born with knowledge in this world. Luo Nan was able to do this because he received a good education. He had one or a few good teachers who imparted a complete system of knowledge to him. C. There are no people who are born with knowledge in this world. With Luo Nan's family background, he doesn't have the time, energy, or conditions to learn such a complete and advanced system of knowledge from a teacher. He has other channels to obtain knowledge, and the current him is very likely to be nothing more than a plagiarist and a porter who borrows this channel. Which one do you choose? Zheng Xiao laughed bitterly, but he still hoped to persuade Li Taixing. He deliberated his response. Now that you say it like this, being born with knowledge is indeed the least likely option. But if it's a teacher, for example, his grandfather who has already gone mad, and his parents who have already been confirmed dead. Li Taixing sneered. Ever since Luo Nan's fame rose to prominence, various powers have conducted research and excavations into his family circumstances as well as his grandfather's formatting theory. But what was the result? This. Too many people have been disappointed. The classical theory of formatting theory is still a freak that is a mixture of classical philosophy and neurobiology. Perhaps this theory does indeed possess a certain amount of influence in the wilderness, but compared to the rapid development of the archetype format in the last 10 years, this theory has already fallen behind in all aspects. Li Taixing stared at Zheng Xiao with a stern expression. Do you think that Luo Nan, a 15 or 16-year-old kid, is able to push this theory to such an inconceivable degree under the premise that he isn't gifted by God? The consecutive rhetorical questions made it hard for Zheng Xiao to parry. He could only laugh bitterly after bitterly. Li Taixing helped Zheng Xiao come to a conclusion. All right. Using the simplest method of elimination, we will inevitably choose C. Since this is the case, where does the channel come from? Where does the system of knowledge come from? Li Taixing's eyes sparkled with light right now. Zheng Xiao's heart thumped. He combined it with his own experiences, and he suddenly understood what sort of judgment and plan Li Taixing had in the end. Under these circumstances, Zheng Xiao didn't want Li Taixing to go to extremes no matter what. He racked his brains for a moment and finally braced himself to say, "The problem lies in the fact that even option C itself can undergo further decomposition." Further decomposition? Li Taixing raised his eyebrows, then he laughed out loud. "I know that there are quite a few people who believe that Jin Tong is related to Luo Nan's cage and configuration theory." Indeed, such a saying was popular right now. The main reason was that Luo Nan had proposed this theory was extremely close to the time when he killed Jin Tong. Luo Nan had indeed taken out a picture of Jin Tong's iconic headband in class on the 14th of this month. This fellow Jin Tong possessed an extraordinary electromagnetic domain that could be said to transcend the era. His extraordinary power had always been in existence that every major power coveted. After all, Earth's science and technology were still unable to escape the influence of the electrical age in the foreseeable future. Jin Tong had always kept this matter a secret for many years. It could be considered a major unresolved case. If Luo Nan's cage and configuration theory came from Jin Tong's legacy, or if it was a combination of this legacy and formatting theory, then the chain of reasoning could be considered relatively complete. However, Li Taixing didn't approve of this conjecture. If Jin Tong's destiny included the content of configuration, then why haven't I seen him become a master in this field after so many years? In terms of talent, intelligence, and intelligence, Jin Tong is in the upper middle of the top 100 powerhouses of the entire world. He's a one-in-a-million character. Could he be that much worse than Luo Nan? He paused for a moment before speaking his final opinion. In comparison, there's an unlucky bastard in the headquarters of the Ability User Society. He said something that the vast majority of people believe to be nonsense. In fact, it really should be nonsense. It's an irresponsible conjecture that is more realistic. Priest Zheng, you should know what I mean. The bitterness in Zheng Zhao's smile had already seeped into his bones. Li Taixing didn't care what Zheng Zhao thought. He spat out 4 syllables, one word at a time. Chapter 644. Luo Nan and his group filled the large-capacity elevator car to the brim. Luo Nan was going to go to a private location next. Of course, he couldn't bring these 20 people with him. They had to be separated. But they didn't part ways here. Speaking of which, tonight's banquet had yet to officially begin. According to Tian Bang's intelligence and Sun Jiai's previous introduction, they had to wait until the end of the public New Year's Eve event. The men and women participating in the banquet had established their initial goals. Of course, they had to set up a few bets. Wine, women, avarice, and temper were all in their respective positions. Only then would the true carnival begin. The banquet wouldn't end in a single night. According to past experiences, the bets would grow larger and larger, and the emotions of the participants would grow higher and higher. Many activities, especially gambling games, would need to be postponed and the scope would continue to expand. Perhaps at that time, the entire Xia city would become a gambling table for certain people. It didn't matter if they were scheming or emotional. If they didn't toss and turn to their heart's content, then it wouldn't be a carnival. Team 1 is on standby at Aurora Cloud City. Team 2 is the same. Focus on monitoring the high-altitude casino. Octopus was responsible for assigning tasks, arranging manpower, and setting up observation points to monitor the physical and mental states of the participants. This was a brain-burning task. It needed to be adjusted according to the actual situation. So, after entering the elevator, he discussed the overall layout of Cloud City Water Village with the relevant people in charge until his mouth was dry. In the end, he was truly annoyed to the extreme. He mumbled, "A bunch of scum are messing around here and we've become eavesdroppers. Boss Luo, if we don't seize the opportunity to catch a few of them and teach them a lesson, our brothers will feel unbalanced." Bamboo Pole seconded, "This is a good suggestion. Otherwise, doctors are the ones with poisonous hearts. Get lost. Who doesn't know that you're a regular at this event? It's not easy for you to calm down this year. Now you bite down to the bone in the blink of an eye? We're familiar with each other. I can sue you for slander if you speak carelessly." Zhang Ying mercilessly exposed Bamboo Pole. "Come on. Who doesn't know that you took over Gao Daming's position because you're familiar with the events and can be a staff officer? Back then, someone made a solemn vow that he would pass on his experience and correct his mistakes. Why are you acting all high and mighty now? The three of them were used to being together. They mingled together when they went out on missions and played games. They were very casual when they cracked jokes. However, they had ulterior motives for their glib talk. After going back and forth for a few rounds, they saw that a certain master did not pay any attention to the many crosstalk comedians. He lowered his head and pondered. The few of them exchanged glances. There's a situation. Have you finally come to your senses? You're not regretting it, are you? The three of them had the same thought. After all, Luo Nan's plant type and tool type, as a comparison, had sounded quite impressive at the time. It was hard to avoid the feeling of feeling dizzy after thinking about it a bit more in the future. The elevator reached the designated floor at this time. A group of people surrounded Luo Nan as they walked out, drawing the curious gazes of quite a few tourists. According to the plan, it was time for them to go their separate ways and reconvene after midnight after the New Year's Eve performance. But right at this moment, Zhang Yingying discovered that Luo Nan's gaze had drifted away. He looked pensive as he cast his gaze towards a certain crowded area. It seemed that he had discovered something. When Zhang Yingying looked over, she found nothing. Luo Nan's attitude inevitably caused people to suspect whether or not he was considering the problem of Li Taixing and the Order of Justice. Zhang Yingying clenched her teeth. She was just about to speak when she heard Luo Nan suddenly sigh. Deep resentment. Oh my, so you know. Zhang Yingying let out a sigh of relief when she heard this. She gave him a free eye roll. You know too? Do you believe that Li Taixing wanted to swallow you alive? That's too simple and direct. There's not enough referential value. What the hell? I'm saying that Li Taixing's hostility is too obvious. The direction is easy to guess. It's nothing more than the intrinsic problem of the Order's solidifying configuration in the Abyss region. Perhaps the Gate of Truth or something is also involved. Nonsense. The Gate of Truth. Zhang Yingying's voice suddenly rose in pitch. She was so shocked that she forgot to close her mouth. Bullshit. Why would something like that look for you? Luo Nan laughed. It's probably the nonsense of some people. There's also a bit of reasoning involved. Li Taixing should be the type of person who pursues rationality. Laugh, laugh, laugh. Things are already like this, yet you can still laugh. Zhang Yingying didn't say anything further. She operated on the psychic wave network, informing the big shots of the branch and the firm of the most recent situation. Since the Gate of Truth was involved, they needed to make preparations early. Hey, wait a minute. Zhang Yingying reacted halfway through her speech. There were no signs at all. She didn't see Luo Nan and Li Taixing discuss this sort of information. How did the Gate of Truth pop out? The atmosphere of the scene became very subtle because of the term Gate of Truth. It was too sensitive. For ordinary people, and even for the vast majority of ability users of the inner world, this term didn't have any actual meaning. However, for the Colossus that was the Order of Justice, the Gate of Truth, which allowed them to see the true form of the supreme sacrificial relic, open supreme authority, and obtain supreme wisdom, was a utopia similar to heaven and the Pure Land. It was a supreme pursuit. The Order of Justice could use the name of the Gate of Truth at any time to start a holy war, regardless of the consequences. It wasn't just Zhang Yingying. Bamboo Pole, Octopus, Qin Ikuan, Gouda, and the other members of the branch, Sher Xin, and the other military and political students were all exchanging glances and information. Only Luo Nan still had a distant expression in his eyes. His expression was misty. Zhang Yingying couldn't hold back her anger when she saw this. Wake up. I'm really going to bicker with you about the Gate of Truth. Do you think that Li Taixing is the only one who came? The fakes of the Order of Justice, from the first ablatum to the members of the Order of Justice, are definitely itching to tear you apart and devour you. It's not like I know where the Gate of Truth is. Luo Nan casually replied, but Zhang Yingying retorted in the blink of an eye. Go say that to Li Taixing. Go say that to the first oblatum of the order of justice. Go say that to this group of people. The military and political students scattered all around immediately shifted their gazes one by one. They wanted to act as irrelevant people, but it wasn't that easy. Zhang Yingying really wanted to send this group of people flying with a kick. However, things were already halfway done. If she were to chase them away, it would be self-defeating. She exchanged glances with her fellow members of the branch. All she could do was clench her teeth and try to salvage the situation. Since you don't know about the Gate of Truth, you should have explained things clearly back then. Li Taixing is an egomaniac. Once he's determined, he can toss you into trouble even if there's nothing going on. He can toss you around with groundless accusations to turn the world upside down. Luo Nen approved of Li Taixing's character and conduct. That is indeed the case. However, his objective was already very clear before he spoke. I've said it before. On the plane of human emotions and thoughts, there are no objectives. There are no restraints. They flow endlessly and become turbid currents of the mind. The occasional flash of thought and the ever-changing emotions are all within them. They are meaningless in terms of individual fragments. Only when the turbid currents of the mind as a whole can they manifest certain trends and probabilities. Comparatively speaking, this is what is worthy of the fortress's detection module and an individual's mental senses to study. Li Taixing isn't like this. His thoughts were extremely clear from the very beginning. He came with an answer to find proof. Then he probably believed that I provided the corresponding evidence, or perhaps I was the key factor that was sufficient for him to make his final decision. Zhang Yingying did her best to extract the key information from Luo Nan's lengthy speech. She grew more and more helpless. You've already dug up his ancestral grave. If he doesn't get rid of you, how can he dispel the hatred in his heart? That's right. It is indeed one of the sources of resentment that I feel. However, this person has a clear direction in advance. He already has a predetermined direction in his heart. His predetermined opinion will certainly cause interference from other factors. It isn't enough to prove some of my thoughts on the trends and probabilities of the turbid currents. Luo Nan walked forward as he spoke. The direction he was heading in was the place where the dense flow of people was. There was a transport staircase there. Thousands of tourists could be quickly transported to every corner of Cloud City Water Village through this high-altitude transport facility. One could reach the performance venue from there, but it was far inferior to the specially designed VIP passageway for the grand banquet. In addition, Luo Nan turned on an AR image projection at the same time. He projected a condensed projection of Cloud City Water Village's building passageways and pipelines. Luo Nan's fingertips flicked lightly on the image, and he found the shortest route within the complex passageways. That was definitely not the direction of the performance venue. Zhang Yingying was shocked. What are you doing? The performance is about to start. What the hell are you doing? I'm capturing the source of a bit of resentment. I feel that I need to do it. Luo Nan played it down. Boss Zhou's change in mood was extremely typical. From the chaotic and meaningless turbid flow of desire, he experienced hostility, fear, jealousy, and a series of other changes. Although his soul strength wasn't truly stripped away from the mental turbid flow until the very end, this tendency existed in the instant when the intensity of certain emotions was elevated. Perhaps he was just lacking a qualitative change, or perhaps he was lacking a highly efficient structure that led to this change. And then, for the sake of ensuring accuracy, I specifically recorded Boss Zhou's change in mood and designed an ideal model. I wanted to find a similar structure within the mental turbid flow that pervades this place. I wanted to calculate the distribution trend and the relevant probabilities. You surnamed Luo. Zhang Yingying finally exploded. She simply jumped up and reached out to grab Luo Nan's neck. We're here worrying about fatal danger for you. We're talking about the Gate of Truth. In the end, you're talking about some probability distribution. Who are you trying to insult? Luo Nan's body tilted. The beautiful girl's arm was strangled around his neck, and his face was pressed against hers. Whether it was the intangible emotions or the actual physical contact, He was unable to adapt for a time. He also understood that if he didn't bring the channel back on track, Miss Zhang Yingying would certainly give him a good beating. For the sake of wisdom, he began to do his best to enter reality mode. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. I'm really serious. You're serious about your theory? Are you going to kick down the mountain gates of the 3 great secret orders and fight head-on against 50 extraordinaries? How could that be? Luo Nen firmly denied it. He reluctantly returned to the problem of the gate of truth. I said it before. That Li Taixing was going to plant the gate of truth on me before we met. Maybe he already had this conjecture when that I number 14 was shooting her mouth off. They were both clear goals and thoughts, but there was a clear difference in the structure and form between the new and the one that had been brewed. Really? Zhang Yingying looked at Luo Nan's confident appearance and was skeptical. Chapter 645. I've thought about it all day long, but it's not as good as what I've learned in a moment. This thought flashed through Luo Nan's mind, but he didn't say it out loud. After all, he couldn't say to everyone, I can do it because there are records and classic configurations in the Virtual Brain Systems user manual. And there are many similar transformations in the materials his mother left behind. It was just like solving math problems. He had already memorized the formula, and he had used the same train of thought many times. Naturally, he would be more sensitive. Of course, without a comprehensive and meticulous grasp of the mental plane, all of this was like a flower in the mirror or the moon in the water. It was completely meaningless. The real situation was hard to say. Luo Nan could only say, Li Taixing's hostility is so obvious, and he himself is a powerful ability user. The corresponding traces are obviously very clear. Clear my S. At this moment, everyone who was listening to him, whether they were branch members or military and political students, were fighting against the power of ridicule in their hearts. Luo Nan finally broke free from Zhang Yingying's neck-grabbing technique. He took 2 quick steps, pulling away once more. At the same time, he explained, this sort of perception doesn't have much meaning. A normal person who is well-versed in the ways of the world can use the most ordinary of eyes to observe and ears to make relatively clear judgments. Octopus hissed in pain, what about the gate of truth? How do you know the specific contents of his considerations? Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. He always needs to allow me to have a bit of a technological advantage. Information deconstruction is a relatively practical part of this method. God, you're fucking practical. You're practically a monster, okay? The vast majority of the people present were mental-type cultivators. No one could truly understand Luo Nan's so-called method. The group of people looked at each other in dismay. Some of the more sensitive ones even felt their brains go cold, as if a stream of air had penetrated through them. They discovered a spirit-sucking monster. Should they call the police? I'm waiting online. It's quite urgent. Zhang Yingying curled her lips and rushed forward 2 steps. She relied on her current height and the advantage of her high heels to press her elbow on Luo Nan's shoulder without a trace of politeness. Get to the point. Right now, we need to discuss how to deal with this fellow Li Taixing's resentment and hostility. Why should I care about him? Luo Nan wanted to spread his hands to express his helplessness, but he nearly pounded Zhang Yingying in the chest. For the sake of preventing Zhang Yingying's emotions from exploding, he could only speak a few more words to express his thoughts. Li Taixing alone. Even if he adds in the group of people under him right now, aren't they just courting death if they want to harm me? In any case, I know where he is. Right now, he is most likely discussing with that officiator Zheng Xiao how to deal with me. Should I get rid of them tonight and get some peace and quiet? What? If that's the case, there's no need to turn back. Just take the E11 elevator up to the 177th floor. Turn left, then turn left again, and you will see that lounge. There are 4 Ablatum Knights outside and 2 First Ablatum Knights inside. Their guard is very loose. The other people in the project department do not need to intervene. Just us, the branch members, will do it. If we catch them off guard, the script will be ready in 30 seconds. The group was choked by Luo Nan's matter-of-fact attitude. At this moment, Octopus somewhat missed the pure and innocent youth they first met. Aside from being a bit paranoid, Octopus didn't understand anything. After staring blankly for 2 seconds, he laughed bitterly and said, "Nanster, we're worried about the order of justice behind Li Taixing." "Hey, hold on a moment. This logic is quite interesting." Bamboo Pole was touched. He had Octopus stop for a moment and said, "Boss Luo, please continue. There's not much to talk about." In the end, Luo Nan was not a public speaker. Persuading others was not his forte. He simply expressed his thoughts as simply as possible. It's true that Li Taixing is the secret-bound first ablatum of the Order of Justice, but he is at best a component or a module of the Order of Justice's system. The confrontation of a module and the confrontation of a system are two completely different things. This is what I'm thinking. If Li Taixing comes alone, our group will more or less be able to send him away. And if the entire system of the Order of Justice crushes him, the branch won't just sit and watch. Don't we have President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu? What you say makes a lot of sense. I actually have nothing to say in response. No one expected that Luo Nan would speak words that were filled with a deep sense of reality. Though he seemed to lack the boldness of a man, it was true. Zhang Yingying blinked her eyes. "Hey, do you think that the branch will be happy to take on a troublesome person like you? This isn't a problem of whether or not it's troublesome. Haven't we cooperated with the government and the military to establish the Fortress Project in order to strengthen our control and authority in the Gully region? Recently in the Gully region, all sorts of temporary configurations and solidified configurations have been very active and sensitive. This is the change brought about by the conflict between systems. You guys know better than me what the situation is like on the plane of reality. Under these circumstances, individual factors are basically subordinate to the whole. Just like the trend of changes in the turbid mental flow. If we can speed up the progress of the project at this time, we can continue to increase the power and deterrence of the fortress, making the trend change more in line with our interests. A lot of troubles will be easily solved. At the very least, we can reduce some of the difficulty. This is a technical problem that I'm quite good at. Zhang Yingying opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, she was left speechless. It wasn't just her. Many of the project team members who followed Luo Nan through the stream of people had no choice but to look at this 16-year-old youth in a new light. Perhaps Luo Nan really was lacking in experience. Perhaps he had been a hopeless theory maniac his entire life. But it was precisely the theory that he was immersed in, the theory that he was good at, that gave him a unique perspective that was hard for others to reach. It also gave him a solid foothold in the world. Of course, whether it was branch members like Zhang Yingying or Bamboo Pole, or the military and political students, none of them would simply believe that the conflict with the Order of Justice was a simple technical problem. But the problem was that the Order of Justice really did have the ability and capital to forcefully turn a practical problem into a technical one. As for whether or not this possibility could be realized, how could they verify it if the matter wasn't right in front of them? At the very least, Teacher Luo's theory was quite convincing based on the series of events that had occurred in the past. Zhang Yingying, Bamboo Pole, and the others exchanged glances. They temporarily gave up on discussing the matter of the Gate of Truth with Luo Nan. Not to mention the fact that they were unable to break through Luo Nan's unique fortress of logic in a short amount of time. Even if they did break through it, would they be able to find a way to solve the problem? Looking at it this way, Luo Nan's thoughts were the clearest. Luo Nan didn't mind how other people viewed him. After discussing their positions and interests, his thoughts returned to the domain he was truly interested in. At this time, the grandiose group of people had already followed him to the other end of the floor. The further they went, the fewer tourists and pedestrians there were. It wasn't because the place was remote, but because of another reason. After walking another 100 steps, someone finally discovered a problem. Where are we? More than half of the people in the group had their wristbands vibrating as they spoke. The SCA's authority system was sending them a warning. They were entering a special authority zone. The so-called special authority zone was perhaps a temporary work area set up by some secret department. Perhaps it was a place where trade secrets were kept. Perhaps it was a high-end place operated by a special authority. In short, it meant that strangers were not allowed to approach. If one's authority in society did not reach a certain level, one's personal credit would be severely affected if one forcefully barged in. Moreover, there was an extremely high probability that one would be driven away by the corresponding security system. One would have to bear the personal damage caused by this. The problem was that Luo Nan's group was either a member of the Xia City branch or an outstanding technical talent of the government or the military. Their authority in society exceeded that of ordinary people by a large margin. It was quite rare to see a situation where more than half of the people in Luo Nan's group were refused visas. Yep, it should be mentioned that Luo Nan was one of the people who were refused visas. The reason the system gave him was this: underage. Octopus spat in disdain. It's definitely the work of those dregs. I remember that it's a high-end private clubhouse up ahead. It's the kind where you can let yourself go. Expert. Bamboo pole gave him a cold stab. This could be considered revenge. Octopus didn't even have time to counterattack when he saw Luo Nan ignore the authority warning without batting an eyelid. He walked straight ahead. The area's alarm and the wristbands sounded at the same time. 2 seconds later, the figures of multifunctional robots appeared in front of them. They quickly arranged themselves into rows, blocking the group's path. Dense footsteps could be heard from further away. It wouldn't be long before the clubhouse's security arrived. Zhang Yingying wanted to ask Luo Nan clearly what was going on, but the branch's duty room contacted her at this time. The system is warning us. Did a conflict occur? How is Mr. Luo? I suggest you guys adjust his authority. Zhang Yingying hastily replied and rushed to Luo Nan's side in a few steps. What in the world are you doing here? I told you. There are many people here at Cloud City Water Village who have grievances against me. They're similar to Boss So. It's worth researching. Luo Nan was very happy to share his thoughts with others. The mental turbid flow is a complex and chaotic object of observation. Pure detection of the details is meaningless. This is because by the time it becomes clear, the matter should have already happened. We need advanced judgment, even some sort of prophecy. This requires some sort of probabilistic analysis and trend analysis. For analysis, mathematical modeling requires a large amount of calculations and the aid of specialized equipment. This isn't easy for the Blood Intent Ring, the Fortress, and for me. Therefore, it's more appropriate to grasp the direct trend of the mental turbid flow. Didn't I discover something just now? I'm going to go verify it. Luo Nan had already arrived before the warning line formed by the multifunctional robots as he spoke. Though there were suspicions of breaking the law, the students from the government and the military were all rubbing their hands in glee. The privileges of the Fortress Project team were quite high. Plus, Luo Nan was the leader. Who wouldn't want to show off in this sort of situation where they could be easily exempted? But Luo Nan didn't give them the chance to show off. The external neuron, which came from a mysterious higher civilization, possessed the ability to control most intelligent devices. He just needed a thought and an entire row of multifunctional robots parted into two sides like a military parade, allowing Luo Nan's group to enter. The security personnel arrived at this time and were loudly berating them. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to them at all. He gave the students a chance to show off. Sure enough, in just 5 or 6 seconds, the security guards who rushed over were all subdued. Luo Nan's pace didn't change at all as he directly entered the core area of the club. He was like a regular customer under the guidance of unrivaled step of the present era's mental senses. He made a few turns in the maze-like corridors of the club and found the place. There was a Rococo-style double golden door in front of him. The 2 pillars and the main door had extremely complex decorative engravings. Every centimeter of the engravings emitted a dazzling luster. Chapter 646. The luxurious double doors gave people the feeling that there was a sealed space behind it. But in reality, when the doors opened, what appeared inside was a very typical European garden. Perhaps there was even a bit of ancient Roman style in it. There was a circular fountain with a diameter of over 20 meters in the middle of the courtyard. The water vapor was dense. Rays of light that mimicked daylight sprinkled down. The weather system should have set it to summer, which was the complete opposite of the season. The temperature here was at least 25 degrees and the humidity was very high. The scattered people were extremely conscious of acting. Each and every one of them wore loose and light robes. Some of them were playing by the side of the fountain or in the pool. They wet their clothes, exposing their bodies as a matter of course. Some of them even smeared essential oil on their bodies, making them look glossy and shiny. Not to mention the men present, all of the women present had beautiful figures that were not inferior to supermodels. Their skin was as white as fat, as yellow jade, and as black as pearls. It was a very pleasing sight to the eyes when they complimented each other in the garden. Luo Nan was the destroyer of this scene. He forcefully entered the door and pressed the pause button on the garden scene. But he didn't stop from the beginning to the end. After entering the door, he bypassed the fountain and went inside the garden. He casually spoke to a beautiful woman who stood like a statue by the side of the fountain. "Excuse me. Are you King crazy? What's going on? Where's the security?" "Security?" Luo Nan walked forward with large strides amidst the roars and screams of the men and women in the garden. Two strong men dressed in Roman warrior attire rushed over while shouting. They were probably the security guards at the scene. But in the blink of an eye, the world spun around them. The two of them turned into drunkards at the same time. They were like two enraged bulls. They collided with each other, their foreheads touching. They didn't have any cushioning measures. They simply fell to the ground, unconscious. The screams of the women at the scene became louder and louder. Zhang Yinging hurried to catch up to Luo Nan's footsteps with great difficulty. She whistled when she saw the scenery and state of the garden. "Did you follow your hormones here?" Before Luo Nan could answer, a person came running over from the side. This person was over middle-aged. He wore loose clothing, but there was a staff card of the club on it. He should be the person in charge of the venue. He was broad and fat. He was panting from running. His soft address showed his attitude. Sir. The person in charge wanted to stop Luo Nan, but he didn't dare to. He just jogged to keep up with Luo Nan's pace, trying to figure out what was going on. "Sir, this is a private club with special privileges. If the issue of the delimitation of privileges has brought you any inconvenience, I'm just passing by." Luo Nan didn't even glance at her from the corner of his eyes. He just walked straight ahead. That was not what he said just now. Zhang Yinging cursed silently, but she wouldn't drag Luo Nan down and expose his secrets. But he soon heard Luo Nan say, "The high-altitude stage performance is about to begin. It's quite far to take a detour. It's faster to get to the venue from here. If you go through the VIP passage, you can even go backstage, right?" The person in charge was a little confused and didn't know how to reply. With their club's background, even the mayor's son would have to be detained first if they were to barge in so simply and brutally. But the problem was that the young man in front of him had come in a group. The bodyguards inside and outside were all tightly blocked by his group of friends or underlings. The multifunctional robots that could be used as security had inexplicably gone out of control, directly turning the club into a defenseless place. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Not to mention the safety of the VIPs present. He had to admit defeat even if he didn't want to. From another perspective, Luo Nan was certainly not an ordinary person. But the club's VIP information didn't have Luo Nan's existence at all. He had the appearance of an old horse that knew the way. He was simply more frequent than a frequent customer. And his age. The person in charge slowed down in his stupor. He wanted to chase after Luo Nan, but he was drowned out by the military and political students following behind him. Not long after passing through the fountain pool area, he entered the colonnade area. Luo Nan passed through the white pillars, brushing shoulders with man and woman one after the other, but he never stopped. One look and one could tell that he had made up his mind. Suddenly, he changed directions and took 2 quick steps. While everyone was still in a daze, He grabbed a figure behind a white pillar and forcefully dragged him out. "What are you doing?" The newcomer was quite frightened. He struggled with all his might. Actually, this person's physique was a size larger than Luo Nan's, who had yet to fully develop. However, Luo Nan, who had already formally awakened, had a degree of toughness in the structure of his body and soul that far exceeded the scope of a normal person. Luo Nan only needed to exert a bit of force to make this person lose the strength to resist. He staggered and fell out from behind the pillar, being watched by a group of people. Zhang Yingying's eyes lit up. Suspicious. It was very clear that this person was dressed in modern casual attire amidst the large expanse of loose and revealing clothing. It was just that he had taken off his shirt. He was completely out of tune with the surrounding environment. It was likely that he had just arrived here and hadn't had the time to change his clothes before Luo Nan caught him red-handed. The person in charge of the venue caught up to Luo Nan the moment he stopped walking. Zhang Yingying turned her head to stare at him. "Look at your attire. You're a thief, right? How are you going to thank us?" The person in charge's face was covered in sweat. "It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Mr. Chow is a VIP of the club. He was here before. He just went out for a bit." This reminded Zhang Yingying. She turned her head to size up the thief and asked him, "Were you at the A2 elevator entrance just now?" The reason why she asked this was because of Luo Nan's series of reactions. One of the starting points was the shift of attention at the elevator entrance. The Mr. Chow that was pulled out was actually quite young. He looked to be in his 20s. His initial intense struggle was futile. He had a very dispirited expression on his face. His reaction was quite different from that of a normal person. When he heard Zhang Yingying talk about the A2 elevator entrance, the last bit of blood drained from his face. It was as if his entire person had experienced a nightmare. Actually, what he experienced in the past few minutes was more or less a nightmare. This person is from the Mystical Research Society. As Luo Nan's bodyguard, Qin Yikuan had put some effort into Luo Nan's social circle. Of course, Gauda had done the same. The two bodyguards compared each other and figured out the identity of this person. Chao Shanhai, a high-level cadre of Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. He had a good relationship with the vice president, Quebec. He was famous for his big mouth. Yes, he was also known as the Gossip Lord. A few days ago, this bro didn't watch his mouth. He nearly insulted Luo Nan's mother. Fei Jin splashed hot coffee on his face and Luo Nan glared at him coldly. He was beaten to the ground and cut an extremely sorry figure. Speaking of which, Chao Shanhai certainly had a grudge against Luo Nan. But when he faced Luo Nan tonight, his grudge could not replace his courage. Earlier at the A2 elevator entrance, he instinctively hid when he saw Luo Nan come over. He didn't know what went wrong and hid in the club. Luo Nan caught him like a turtle in a jar and pulled him out. Right now, Chao Shanhai's mental state was about to collapse. His nervous mood was overflowing with words. Anyone could see that this fellow was feeling guilty. He was certainly hiding something in his heart. With this kind of courage, he would probably collapse with just a little poke. Luo Nan didn't have any intentions of communicating with him. Or perhaps it could be said that seeing Chao Shanhai's performance was enough for him. He loosened his grip on Chao Shanhai and said, "Follow me." He didn't say why he was following him. Chao Shanhai didn't have the possibility to refuse. There were a dozen government and military personnel behind him. Even if they were just technical personnel, controlling an ordinary person would be extremely easy. Luo Nan walked back to his original path and continued forward. Chao Shanhai was bound by the flow of people as he moved forward. Struggling was meaningless. He had companions here. Unfortunately, this group of companions came from the Divine Research Society. They overlapped with the group of people from the hot drinks shop a few days ago. Many people lost the courage to interfere when they saw Luo Nan. Even those who didn't know what was going on acted like quails and shrank back into the crowd when they saw more and more subordinates gathering behind Luo Nan. Chao Shanhai walked like this for 20 to 30 steps before he collapsed. He sat on the ground with all his might. "It's none of my business." It's none of my business. I just listened to them talk. I didn't participate. What the hell? There really was an inside story here. Zhang Yingying, Bamboo Pole, and the others were shocked. Was there some conspiracy against Luo Nan that was hidden from the branch's intelligence network? Boss Luo, what in the world is going on? Zhang Yingying's curiosity really exploded. She quickly caught up to Luo Nan's pace, wanting to get to the bottom of things. Luo Nan didn't hide anything. He replied, "This person's nature is the same as Boss So's. The evil intent against me in the mental turbid flow is clear, but it hasn't been able to form an effective structure. Tracing back from its flow, there is a similar unformed structure surrounding him. I want to verify it." He has accomplices? Zhang Yingying could only understand this much. They passed through the colonnade of the atrium as they spoke, entering the garden at the back of the courtyard. This place was a bit more secluded than the front. It was impossible to tell the real from the fake flowers and trees. They formed a carpet of grass green, purple and red interwoven. The walls of flowers formed a rather ingenious partition. Right now, there were pairs of men and women, or more complicated combinations of men and women. They tumbled on the grass and among the flowers and trees. The light, color, and aura perfectly rendered the atmosphere of an open banquet. Octopus swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The banquet hasn't officially started yet. There are quite a few impatient people. Nanster, you didn't come here to catch us in the act? Zhang Yingying kicked Octopus in the waist, who didn't keep his mouth shut. As for Luo Nan, he didn't pay attention to Octopus at all. He raised his wrist once more to look at the time. There's still 20 minutes. He was talking about the performance time of the Mountain Creek Band, which Moyo was a part of. Zhang Yingying knew this better than he did. If it doesn't take too long, and if it really is as you said, there's a VIP passageway that leads to the backstage, we can still save him. Looking at the flow of mental turbid flow, it doesn't matter whether we save him or not once the tendency of people's hearts has taken shape. Huh? Zhang Yingying was dumbfounded by the completely unrelated response. At this time, a dozen meters ahead, behind the flower and tree partition that was half the height of a person, a human figure suddenly flipped over. It was a man and a woman, and they seemed to be pulling at each other. The woman had a head of long hair that was like a waterfall. It covered most of her shoulders and neck, but a small portion of her body that was brimming with the luster of youth was still exposed. It was easy to imagine what kind of state she was in just now. She didn't pay attention to Luo Nan's party, who was approaching. She hastily put on her clothes and waved away the unforgiving hand of the man beside her. She staggered a bit, but she still firmly pulled away from the object of intimate contact. "I'm in a hurry. If you have the time, there's a whole bunch of people here. Let go." And at this time, the woman finally noticed Luo Nan, who was only a few steps away. She was stunned for a moment, then she suddenly lowered her head, letting her hair cover her face. At the same time, she suddenly exerted force and practically kicked away the man beside her. She walked away barefoot. Unfortunately, due to the design of the passageway, it was impossible for her to bypass Luo Nan's party no matter what. She could only maintain the posture of keeping her head down and her hair hanging down. She walked with quick steps, nearly tripping over some grass in the middle. Luo Nan didn't move. Octopus, who was beside him, helped her up in a gentlemanly manner, but the woman threw him off by reflex. Her footsteps became faster, and she soon went far away. Octopus didn't mind. He took a deep breath and revealed an expression of enjoyment. Bamboo Pole clicked his tongue twice. Really not bad? What a pity that you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.